meme intro today.
We won't wait too long. Just make sure it's busted off.
There it is.
I'm gonna go put that lamb in the oven, and then I'm gonna sit right here. I thought you guys were talking.
Cool.
The internet's like, I can't.
Oh, I guess I better push play on Annalore. Hi, everybody, if you're watching. Let me get you some music while we let the memes roll.
Hello, hello.
There we go. That's more like it.
Our stream health is good.
What's up?
You see that?
Yeah, all you gotta do is call the cable company every month, every week, and then your stream health will be good.
Welcome to the show.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
I'm making a Facebook post.
Nice. Facebooks.
I'm tagging Jim and Tracy on Facebook right now.
Oh. Well, I don't like the Facebook.
Yeah, but it still includes your friends on your list. If you don't want me to do it, say something.
Oh, sure. Do it. I think I have friends.
Oh my gosh, the wrong Tracy Twyman popped up, and it's some black lady. I'm glad I didn't touch that.
Well, I'm sure she'd probably like to watch the show.
Yeah, there used to be a lot more like Tracy Twyman that were, and I think they all got sick of getting email from me. It's hard to find now.
There can be only one Tracy Twyman.
Well, it used to be too. Like when you would Google my last name Twyman, you would usually get James Twyman first, and then me. And now I don't know. Like maybe I still compete with James Twyman, but it's easier to find I definitely come up on the first page for sure. But yeah, there aren't that many Twymans. As I was reminded recently. What happened to the music? Okay.
Tracy shared it on Facebook too. Cool. Share it a little bit. And Tweezer.
I wish it was Wednesday.
I wish you'd spelled Wednesday right.
Did I spell it wrong?
Oh no, I have.
Yeah.
Oh. Did I spell it wrong?
You left out the second E. Like Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday. W-E-D-N-E-S.
Wonder why it stopped.
Uh-oh.
We're doing this again?
I got a blank screen here, guys.
Uh-oh. That's not good.
This video playback interrupted. Let me see, I'm gonna reload.
No, it is. It's dead over here too. Pause the music for just a second, see if this pops back up. Stream complete. No, it's not.
Did you put a time limit on it?
No, I don't think so. There says stream resumed now, so it should pop you back up. Let me get the music back on over here. Dandelion Radio.
We back on yet?
Well,
Oh, it's green again.
turn this off for a second.
With WD.
Are you seeing anything or not, Tracy?
Yes, it seemed to come back.
Oh,
We're
it
at-
said look at output low. Look at that, Jim. It
What?
says 5 watching, but output low.
YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming.
Getting a late start, gentlemen. Hey, somebody in the crowd's picking on us.
Why is it buffering? Ah,
Yeah, it's lagging on us.
maybe we should turn our
'Cause
phones off of Wi-Fi. turn your Wi-Fi off.
I guess we'll go ahead and send this tweet either way.
You mean you're running low on the air that your show broadcasts on? Or the space in the tubes or whatever?
Yeah.
Well, we shouldn't be, but I mean, it's ironic that Jim was just twisting the cable company's arm like, hey man, we're kind of nervous about our show. We don't always have a good connection, and then here we have the probably the most major problem we've seen in weeks.
Yeah, it was.
Well, since the time we tried to watch Meatloaf, that was our fault, though. We were commenting on Paradise by the Dashboard Light, and they killed that stream, and they're just like, get that out of here. You don't get to you don't get to watch Meatloaf on your show. It's totally within fair use. I know fair use well enough. I don't have it memorized like a lawyer or anything, but.
Why do these companies like want to make some money by just making ASCAP licenses easy to buy?
Yeah, I agree.
I don't understand that.
I mean, we've got a lot of copyright notices, and most of them, that's what it is. It's like, hey, you looked at some of our content, we're going to potentially monetize your video, and it's like, great. And we were just reminiscing and talking with somebody. I don't remember, who did we have on the show, Jim? Do you remember that we were talking about Meatloaf? Who was it? It was me and you, and someone else was on with us.
Is it your brother?
Yeah, maybe it was. I don't remember, but anyway, we pulled it up like, oh, we were talking about karaoke.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
I don't know.
Karaoke's fun.
Tracy, did you see the end of the one show I did where I sang Mr. Crowley and replaced it with your name and improvised lyrics?
No, I didn't see that.
I'll have to go pull it here. I'm just gonna switch us over here so they can see us too.
Looks like
because we're on now. We're on and the stream's on, so let's just fade in. Hi everybody, I'm SB, this is Jim, and we have this week an invisible Tracy Twyman. She is here literally in spirit. If you listen in, you can hear her voice.
If you use the Ouija board, you can get me too. In spirit.
That's funny. That reminds me of a meme I made on Facebook for you a long time ago. It said, the devil didn't make me do it, but I talked to him about it on the squeegee board.
Dang, you guys have to... I don't even know about all this stuff.
Well, you liked that one, but that was probably 6 months ago.
Oh, okay. Check it out.
Could you imagine if we tried to get our memes all in one place?
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah, so here we are. All 10 folks watching, we want to let you know that although we totally talked about being super organized, we decided last minute, like, screw it, we didn't get as organized, so we're just going to improvise. We're going to pick up where we left off a little bit last week, maybe go back to Sammy Davis Jr. and try and remember what it was we were saying about Hawaii Five-0. I remember looking at the lyrics, and the lyrics to Hawaii Five-0 were... There were two different versions, one Don Ho and
yes.
And the other one Frank Sinatra.
No.
What? No, it wasn't?
No, it was Sammy Davis.
Sammy Davis, yeah.
And generally, of course, people are used to not hearing lyrics, so it's the Ventures version of the song that is popular. Are you there, man?
Yeah.
You know what? I gotta look at the. Okay, since there's a delay, I've been looking at the stream as it plays here, but that's not gonna work because your lips are moving and it's all different than what you're actually doing.
Yeah, that'll mess you up. Watching the live feed will mess you up.
All right, and then I get no visuals when I just look at the Hangout. So, hey, sorry, I get no visuals when I look at the Hangout. So I guess I'll just have to ignore that. But at any rate, yes. So Hawaii Five-0, like. There's some lyrics. I don't know who wrote it. When I looked at it on Wikipedia a few weeks ago, I remember just being shocked at the lack of information. Like, there's some information about the Ventures cover, which made it, radio play, like, around the time that the show was premiering. But there wasn't a lot of information about... Say, for instance, there are two versions that have lyrics, and one is, I guess, the first version that has Don Ho, and that one's kind of positive and happy, and it's all about. It seems like it's a guy talking to his girlfriend and trying to convince her to, I guess, go away with him or
Right,
come live
right.
with him on the island.
Now, Tracy, I just unmuted my camera, so it might. Are you seeing us now, or at least seeing me?
Let's see. Okay, yeah. That makes
Okay,
me
cool.
feel
So
a little
that,
more at
that'll
home.
help. I mean, because it does help with some visual cues help. So, but anyways, yeah, that's what I remember. And that was the first. That was who's the guy? Tiny Bubbles, Don Ho, right?
No.
Yeah.
Tim?
Here, it's in our Twitter
Don Ho.
talk, so I'm gonna find the records here and read the lyrics out loud. Or I could also just Google them. Maybe that'd be easier.
I was thinking about Tiptoe Through the Tulips. It's pretty good
I
song.
love Tiny Tim. I can't lie. I love Tiny Tim. He's awesome.
He kind of reminds me of Marilyn Manson.
Yeah, he does. Tracy, have you ever seen the video of Tiny Tim and another member of the Rat Pack, Dean Martin? Have you seen their shtick?
No, I really haven't.
Maybe later on in the show we'll toss that up there so you can take a look, because it's
That'd be pretty funny.
it's whoa. I guess if we were gonna do that, that might not work this week. We'd have to like put it on and then like look at our watch and wait. Like, all right, Tracy should be seeing it in 5, 4, 3. It's like an 8-second delay or whatever. But
Do you want to
I was gonna go over here and see if I can get the lyrics up on the screen too here.
Okay.
Let's do that. So here we are.
I'm not using the equipment I normally use, which is why you can hear me breathing so loud, guys. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I put the cryptic title "Lost Keys" because I figured people would think, like, oh, the keys of Solomon, or like the Enochian, keys, and it's like, no, really, like lost keys. We're not going to say any more than that, but just like the ones you lost when you couldn't get into your car and you had to call a locksmith. Not you or me or Jim, but everyone that's listening. We've all had that experience. Like, oh crap, my keys.
You step outside in your bathrobe to get the newspaper, and then you turn around. Oh crap!
I have a lifelong habit of flipping that little safety handle at a hotel
Oh,
out,
yeah.
so that because how many times have I gone back to the front desk looking disheveled, like, "Hi, I'm in room 667," and
Yeah.
Okay, I'm resending you the document I sent you maybe last week or so that has the lyrics in it, and
Oh,
I think some
cool.
comments for me too.
Okay, are you
So-
sending that in Twitter DM?
Yes.
Okay, well let me.
So
You wanna
if
type in your.
I'm gonna
password.
change back to
Yeah,
just
go-
regular camera so that we're not putting our Twitter DMs on the live stream, and then I'll.
okay.
Cool.
Anyway, it's a PDF, and I don't know. It has my notes in it too. I guess.
No, this is great. I'll just pop this up here, and
Turn this off too.
I wonder what happens if we type Hawaii 5-0 karaoke. I wonder which lyrics come up. Not that I want to do that. I'm just curious now, like, because there are 2 versions. Come on, Mr. PDF. Yeah, Tracy, I will totally go back to whichever show that was. I think it was the one that we did where we were trying to see if you wanted to come on. It's like, does Tracy Twyman drink tea was the title or whatever, and you weren't actually on. I think it was the end of that show. Or no, maybe it was the one where you had to bail, and then we still went on for a while after you were gone.
Which one was it?
I was talking about the Mr. Crowley thing.
Oh yeah,
'Cause that came into my head years ago, and so that night I decided to do it. Like the idea to sing, Tracy Twyman instead of Mr. Crowley. It's really funny. I'd love to work
Hey.
it out as a real production.
My browser closed and I just restarted it. So
Oh.
here I am again.
Okay. Oh, so you didn't hear this?
Yeah, that was the first time Tracy was on our show. It was right after she got off I think it was the week before Halloween.
Right. Yeah, and then she had to leave, and then we still went on for like an hour.
27, I think. Was it episode 27?
I think it was 27. I think you're right. Yeah. So okay, I'm just gonna read this doc from the beginning because the lyrics are right here. So.
Okay.
This is just so you guys all know, this is a document. Tracy, is this actually part of the extended writing that you made on this whole subject, or is this separate?
Well, it's the same. It's the only thing I've written. It's just a bunch of notes, and it has my thoughts on it, and it has the lyrics. And my computer's totally frozen up now. I can't even see it. So you tell me what's on it.
Okay, no, yeah, I'll read it from the beginning, and I'll stop at the end of the first set of lyrics here. And it looks like these are the Don Ho lyrics. It says, Hawaii Five-0 premiered September 22nd, 1968. The original lyrics for the intro, sung by Don Ho, were, "Do it till it's perfect for you, and for me too. You can come with me, so leave your world behind you. You can come with me. Sing the song, I'll teach you. Live your fantasy, loving in a natural way. Doesn't matter what time of day. You and I play. You can come with me. You can come with me." So that's the lyrics to that song. Most of us, if you're older, you're familiar with, you know, ba 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 ba, the Hawaii Five-0 theme. Oh.
But this version is like a Hawaiian ukulele type version that Don Ho did.
Yeah, I can
So if
play
you were to
it. If the link's there, if you want, I'll play it. You guys want to hear it real quick?
Yeah, do it as long as you can get away with it. Yeah, and I think you probably can.
Oh yeah, we're commentating, so here it is. It's a coming. Come on, YouTube, you can do it. Unmute it. Now, welcome to Picture Show, and get ready to get this song stuck in your head, because that's what happens.
Can you turn that up?
Is it quiet? Okay.
Well, I don't know. It could be. There you go.
What's that?
Setting problem.
Yeah, well, it's just going slow. It's just hanging for some reason. So yeah, on this YouTube video it says Don Ho, "You can come with me." So like, I wonder if that's the original name of the song or not.
Well, I think it is, but yeah, it's like again, we have to look at what Wikipedia says now, and I don't even know if it'll be the same as what it said a couple weeks ago. But there just wasn't a lot of information, and I don't know what album to get in order to get this Don Ho song. And then there's another version, and I'm also a bit confused about that because what I can see here. Well, I'll tell you later. So is it playing or
It's
able to
just
play
hanging.
now?
It's just hanging on
Maybe
us
we
here.
should
Yeah, I'm gonna refresh it and see. And what I'm also gonna do is I'm gonna open the document again, so maybe we'll just keep reading while we're waiting for it here. When I clicked on that link, it didn't open a new tab, so.
Well, okay. So what year did it say? Did I say that the show premiered in my notes there?
It's loading real slow. I'm almost back to the document now, so.
Okay.
1968, I think.
68. Okay.
Yeah,
So it would have been on the air. The show would have been on the air for about a year before the Manson murders happened. And this is around the time then that Charles Manson and his girls were all hanging out at Universal Studios. Is one place where they went for a week or so hanging out, and they were doing tricks like getting paid for sex, and also including Charles himself was getting paid for sex. He said that some really big guy in Hollywood named Mr. B and his wife paid him to have sex with both of them. And I was thinking that was either Yul Brynner or perhaps Marlon Brando. And we know that Marlon Brando was bisexual, but I don't know what his marital status was that year. So I need to check that out. But I was thinking maybe Mr. B was Brando.
Wow, what a thought.
Anyway.
Wow.
Huh?
I said, what a thought. That's just blowing my mind, the idea of like Charlie Manson, Marlon Brando and his wife, or Yul Brynner. It's not like that's that's even weirder to me. I mean, I can imagine Marlon Brando doing a lot of weird, bad stuff. But Yul Brynner seems more straight, but of course, you know, none of these people are really straight, folks.
Yeah, I've read some weird things about both of them, but Brando, it's like if he had a wife, during that time period, which I need to check, but that would fit right in with this scenario. I could totally see that. And so anyway, and also Manson supposedly did some soundtrack work for some surf movies. So I'm wondering if this song could have possibly been, just like some Beach Boys songs are Manson songs. I wonder if this one derives or is in any way inspired, because the lyrics to the Don Ho version are Manson-esque, I think, when it talks about leaving your world behind. That's a line that is used exactly in a Manson song that was recorded around the same time, really, called "Your Home Is Where You're Happy," and it's all about breaking your bridges and leaving your family life behind to join the new Charles Manson family. And we got similar lyrics in here, except it's all about, I guess, joining Don Ho on the island or something.
Right, yeah, I mean, it's like, it's definitely framed in the idea of, like, passionate love, like, oh, baby, just come with me. And, I mean, it seemed, when I just read it, I mean, we could read it one more time here, since the song just, the song may start in the middle of me reading, but here, I'll read through it real quick one more time, just so. Do it till it's perfect for you and for me too. You can come with me. So leave your world behind you. You can come with me. Sing the song. I'll teach you. Live your fantasy. Loving in a natural way. Doesn't matter what time of day. You and I play. You can come with me. You can come with me. So for the most part, it's pretty subtle, like, and vague. But the any time of day, to me, that's kind of like a wink and a nudge. That's almost like afternoon delight. That's how I read that. Like.
Yeah, and loving in a natural way. It's like it's a free love message, I think.
Yeah, exactly. If you can't be with the one you love, love the one you're with. Huh?
Well, of course, the Manson family was, a constant orgy, basically. So I wouldn't have thought much of that by itself, but I had looked this up in the course of my research to do with the Manson family and Sinatra. And the reason why is because there's an episode of Hawaii Five-0 that's based on an incident in Frank Sinatra and Frank Sinatra Jr.'s life, which I talked about, I think, on the last show, right? We talked about Frank Sinatra Jr.'s kidnapping.
Right, we touched on that briefly, but yeah, so that was the subject of an episode of Hawaii Five-0.
Yes, they based a episode of Hawaii Five-0 on that. And so that's why I was like, okay, well, I'm going to look at Hawaii Five-0, and I ended up looking up the theme song, and that's when I found out that there were these two versions that have lyrics. So then the next version that I think came out a year or so later was the Sammy Davis Jr. version, and this one seems like it goes right along with the scenario of Frank Sinatra Jr.'s kidnapping, and what I think was the larger situation around that. Because I highly suspect that, just as the defendants said in that case, they said Frank Sinatra Jr. was in on the kidnapping, and it was all a ploy to get some money.
Right.
And so in these lyrics to the Sammy Davis Jr. version, you can see how they might be applied to that situation if that was in fact the case. Okay, Frank Sinatra Sr. Got sucked into the situation, of course, when the ransom note was sent to him. And then he had to deal with it. He had to get the Attorney General involved and the FBI, and, had to make all these negotiations to try to get his son back alive. And he couldn't, maybe, I don't know. I assume at the time he didn't know what to think, right? He must have thought it was real. And then I think when it became evident later that his son was in on it, then they must have had a very interesting discussion, Junior and Senior, right? Because, of course, Frank Sinatra Sr. is a thug, or was a thug, and had done lots of illegal and immoral things, as we discussed in the last show. And it was, a very key asset to the mafia. And so his son would have been, would have absorbed this as a child, and perhaps would have, thought, this is the cool thing to do. This is the way to make my dad proud. I'll scam him out of some money, but, later on he'll realize that I'm a tough guy just like he is.
Right.
Right?
And we see this theme
So
over
then
and over
look-
again too of you know, there's a common Hollywood theme for slapstick type or kind of comedy-esque type movies of almost makes me think of Jack Tripper, you know, like the confusion that comes with faking your own kidnapping.
I don't know that one. Jack Tripper, what's that?
Oh, Jack Tripper, that's I said that because of Three's Company that's like the theme to the whole series, you know, is like some kind of irony that's ironic confusion that makes the whole thing impossible for whoever's being perpetrated to understand, you know. So in this case, it would be Frank Sinatra, like having genuine concern that his son is in danger, when behind the scenes, you know, they're thinking they're trying to get away with something, you know, make a profit, and like you said, maybe even impress Frank with their gangsterliness.
Yeah, so then, I mean, it would help, of course, if I had seen the episode of Hawaii Five-0. I haven't seen it yet. But just extrapolating from what I've read, it seemed like the lyrics here to the Sammy Davis Jr. version, which, of course, Sammy Davis is, you know, Frank Sinatra's friend. So we've already got two Rat Pack members here connected to Hawaii Five-0 with just that alone. The fact that they have an episode based on Frank and his son getting kidnapped, and then they have this second version of the lyric version of the intro, Sammy Davis being the one to perform it. And then the lyrics, well, we can read them here, and there's even another tie-in with a Frank Sinatra movie called Lady in Cement. I think this is the sequel to The Detective, or maybe it's the second. Okay, it's the second Tony Rome movie, where I think Frank's like a private detective or something. But there's a gangster in that movie, and that gangster's son pulls a heist of some sort, and his father's trying to stop him from getting himself into big trouble, you know. And he's like, "Well, Dad, you taught me how to do it, and I'm trying to impress you." So I wondered if, like, for one thing, is that scene in that movie, you know, based on the reality of Frank Sinatra's life, or you know, if in not necessarily the kidnapping, but just the reality that Frank Sinatra's son Jr. might have wanted to be a thug just like his dad, and may have tried some stuff like that.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm getting at, was saying that we've definitely seen that theme over and over again. It makes me curious if it all stems from this situation, because behind the scenes they all know that it was really like Frank Sinatra Jr.'s big screw up, and so they just kept using the theme because it worked and because it referenced something real.
And another layer to that story is that, you know, Frank, okay, first of all, even if Frank Jr. was in on it, he obviously expected not to be fingered in the end, you know. No one ever thought that they would get caught and the defendants would just admit that Frank Sinatra Jr. was part of it. So it's like, this is the reason why Jan and Dean, and I think it was Dean of the pair, Jan and Dean, of the surf music duo, he's the one that had helped to finance this whole caper. And as I said in the last show, both Jan and Dean believe that their careers were sabotaged and that attempts were made on their life, all at the behest of Frank Sinatra Sr., who was very angry at them about this whole situation.
All stemming from the embarrassment and probably the very genuine fear. Like, once you find out it's fake, you're embarrassed, but prior to that, like, your most precious thing, your son, you think he's in danger. I mean, that's...
Yes, and then the anger at not only him getting caught, but then him getting, as they would have seen it, you know how these guys are, just like, "Ooh, you double-crossed me. You don't fuck with me."
Yeah,
you know?
And you don't rat ever, right? No matter what, everyone just shut up. Doesn't matter how many bodies are buried. Nobody talk about anything.
Well, it's true. Like, okay, one of the interesting things I thought about the Berkowitz story, which I just finished reading, The Ultimate Evil, by Maury Terry, where he gives you, way more detail than anyone knew before he wrote this book about.
Remind us what the Berkowitz murders are, please. I remember it, but it just doesn't come to mind. So just in case anyone else isn't familiar, please remind us.
Sure. Okay, so these were the Son of Sam killings. So some people got killed seemingly randomly in the 70s, late 70s, 77, I think, shot with a 44 Bulldog revolver. And there were all these totally various descriptions of the perp or perps. And yet the cops and the newspapers decided there was one guy, even though the pictures just totally look different. And so when they finally captured one of them, who was David Berkowitz, then they just decided that case closed and he did all the murders. And he started telling them that he had done it because some dog was talking to him in his mind, and the dog was really Satan. And so he got convicted, he confessed, got put in prison. And why did I bring this up? Just because he went ahead to tell Maury Terry and some other investigators, well, mainly other people in prison who then themselves also told Maury Terry many details about what really motivated those crimes, and that he wasn't the only one shooting these people, which is why there were so many different pictures of the perpetrators. And he said he was a hitman for this thing called the Process Church, which I mentioned before.
Right. Okay.
And it's anyway. So he's the Process Church is like some cult from the 60s that actively tried to recruit a bunch of Hollywood people and people in the music industry, and they successfully did. And I think the Manson family was an extension of the Process Church. So many other researchers agree, and even Manson himself essentially said that.
They're still around today, aren't they?
Huh?
I mean, the Process Church is still around as far as we know, right?
Well, it's gone through, permutations. I think at this point, there's a company in business now that's essentially continuing, and it's called Process Media. So they're the ones that put out a documentary about the Process Church recently.
Right.
That kind of tries to make it seem just like a bunch of nice hippies. And then they own the rights
to go like
stuff.
cover your own. It's so typical for them to go and be their own press too. Of course, like you see this so many times. Like the person exposing it turns out to be either working for or directly involved in whatever's going on. They call it a limited hangout, right? Like, well, we have to tell them something, so let's make our own documentary.
Yeah. Well, so anyway, the. Yeah, I guess why am I so nervous? It's just like I don't want to. Those people are still around, so you got to kind of be careful about how you talk about this. But one of the interesting permutations of the church that's still around too is that there's a animal sanctuary that was originally owned by Marianne de Grimston, the co-founder of the Process Church, and I don't think she directs it anymore. It became this thing called Best Friends Animal Sanctuary. And they actually have a show on Animal Planet now that's been going for years. And it's the reason why this is so alarming to people is because the Process Church was known specifically for sacrificing German Shepherds. And that was one of the things that Berkowitz talked about, and he and his friends who got him involved in all of this, they used to go to Untermeyer Park there in, I think, Long Island, or I don't know, somewhere in New York, and it was by where he lived. And anyway, so killing dogs, sacrificing dogs is like one of the hallmarks of the Process Church. So people, of course, got nervous when they realized that the Process Church had started a animal sanctuary. And there's and not to go too far afield here, but if you Google, you'll find someone posting something on a forum somewhere. You'll find it right away because there's only one post of this thing around. And someone had noticed that the show Mr. Pickles on Animal Planet, or not Animal Planet, Cartoon Network or something, or no, Adult Swim. Okay. There's a show called Mr. Pickles. Have you ever seen it?
Yeah, I've heard of it. I haven't watched it, but no, actually, it was because of you, Jim, right? Yeah. This dog, the German Shepherd, goes like underground and is like rivers of blood and sacrifice and all this satanic stuff. Yeah.
Yes, I don't know if he's a German Shepherd. But he's a dog, and he's doing all these things. Exactly what you're describing. He commits human sacrifices. He has a lair underground
Yeah,
where
you go through his doghouse and it takes him to his satanic cave where he does all this ritual black magic sacrifice. Crazy.
So what's funny is the logo for that show greatly resembles one of the logos that the Best Friends Animal Sanctuary uses, and someone noticed, and I agree with them that it does look very similar. So either someone at Adult Swim is playing a joke, or it's not a joke.
Yeah, or it's in plain sight, exactly.
But back to the Sammy Davis lyrics here. I guess we can't. We're having trouble playing videos, right?
It, but I've got the Sammy Davis lyrics up on the screen here, and I can read those out for you if you want me to do that, so we can compare.
Yeah, go ahead, man. See how it sounds like it could be describing the situation between the Sinatra guys.
Right. So
go ahead.
So if you were with us there, folks, the other lyrics were pretty much kind of like a love song, maybe some free love and double entendre. Here's the lyrics from when Sammy Davis sang it. And like Tracy said, imagine maybe it's about Frank Sinatra Jr. potentially faking his own kidnapping and all of that. So
and his dad's having a talk with him.
Yeah, exactly.
So go ahead.
Frank Sr.'s giving him the business. If you get in trouble, bring it home to me, whether I am near you or across the sea. I will think of something to do. I'll be on the lookout for you, and I'll find you. You can count on me. And don't you let 'em get you up against the wall, 'cause I'll be there to catch you, and I won't let you fall. Call me if they hit you below, call me when there's nowhere to go, and I'll be there, you can count on me. And if they all desert you, and you start to bend, you know I won't let them hurt you, and I don't pretend. Don't call if you've got nothing to say. Don't call me if you just want to play, but call me on Devil's Day. You can count on me. And it repeats, you can count on me, you can count on me.
I love this William Shatner delivery, by the way. It's great.
Oh, what a compliment.
But yeah, okay, don't call me if you just want...
Like it.
But yeah, if he said like, don't call me if you just want to play. Frank Sinatra Sr. was notoriously not there to raise his kids at all. He was off being a celebrity and doing lots of stuff, and also screwing lots of other women besides his wife. And then they got divorced early on. So anyway, yeah, Frank Sinatra Sr. was not there very much to play with Junior. And I can totally see him saying that, like not even feeling guilty about it. Just, hey, don't bother me if you just want to play. But if you got serious business, you can count on me. And which is exactly what happened. Like, it seems to me like Frank Sinatra Jr. totally fucked up, and his dad overlooked his culpability in the whole thing and just was like, okay, well, your friends burned you on this deal. You can count on me to help you. And then he tried to kill the guys who did it.
Yeah, I can see it even being one step farther than that, and that Sinatra Jr. could have even known that there was a good potential that they would figure it out and that he would get caught, and that it's a true plea for help, because that's what people do, especially children. But if you really want someone's attention, you don't care how poor the quality of attention is. And if it's your dad and you feel like he's always been absent your whole life, it's not impossible that Sinatra Jr. knew what risk he was taking and was willing to go that far, I guess is what I'm saying. That's possible too,
Because the little boy inside him was trying to get attention from Dad by getting kidnapped.
Yeah, Daddy gives his attention to the whole world, but not to me. So I guess I got kidnapped then. So,
well, maybe, who knows? I mean, he could have, maybe when negotiations weren't going how they wanted, and maybe Frank Sinatra Jr. was starting to get nervous that this wasn't going to go well, maybe he made a little phone call, which is exactly what this song would be about then. Like, hey, Dad, I'm sorry, I messed up a little bit. Can you help?
If you're not going to give him the money, I guess you better find out the truth.
So Jack V's asking what's a Devil's Day, according to the lyrics?
Well, that's a good question. Like, Devil's Night is a word that's used sometimes for Halloween, but only in certain places. Like I know it's used in Detroit, and Eminem made a song about it because of that. And it's basically because it's an excuse in that town. They call it Devil's Night on Halloween. It's an excuse to go around vandalizing and fucking things up. But I'm thinking just in the context, this is about in Devil's Day is when trouble happens. You know, when you're up against the wall. You know.
So now, what was the name of that farm again, Tracy? I'm gonna switch this over here. I know you can't see it, but I was looking at some or the dog place, not farm, but the animal sanctuary. Pardon me.
Best Friends.
Best Friends, because okay, so folks, here's some pictures of Mr. Pickles, and you can see if I scroll here. I mean, it's like Mr. Pickles with like a severed arm in his mouth, giving the thumbs up. Mr. Pickles in front of all the people, almost looks kind of like a comic book cover. And then if you scroll down, if you just, all I have is Mr. Pickles, not in quotes, in Google image search. As you scroll down, like you get kind of a psychedelic Mr. Pickles with lots of eyes, and then he's like directly sniffing or licking a lady's butt while she's washing the dishes. He's inside of a pentagram with looks like with Pickle Rick in his mouth. And you go farther and it just gets worse. There's faces like from Texas Chainsaw Massacre hanging on the line. And on. It just gets, the farther down you go, the more satanic it gets. And literally, Tracy, I wish you could see this one. I'm going to click this one and blow it up. This is kind of offensive, folks, but if you know about the, what's it called? It's the opposite of a sacred kiss. When you don't get to kiss the devil on his mouth, instead you have to kiss his ass. There's a name for it, according to your research.
Osculum infame.
Yeah.
Infamy. Excuse me. Infamy.
Yeah, oculum infame. So in the cartoon, apparently, someone is having to look directly at someone's exposed ass with it spread, and it looks just like the artwork from your book and other stuff I've seen you post of that, you know. So most people would see this and think, oh, that's just really horrible and disgusting, whereas I see it and I see like a deeper occult reference, even though the show is already highly occult. And I'm going to go ahead and fade away from that now because it's just atrocious.
So Lord Brian says, what's up?
Lord Byron's in the chat. What's up? Yeah, what's up, everybody?
Chat.
Thank you for coming. We're kind of focused on the conversation, but we will jump over and read the chat and answer some questions. Jim's keeping up with it by looking at his phone, so don't hesitate to throw in your input. We're not on any kind of strict regiment here. We're just picking up where we left off last week, and we were comparing the lyrics for Hawaii Five-0, Don Ho versus the Sammy Davis version, which really, I think you're right, Tracy. It really sounds like it's referencing trouble or kidnapping or whatever, because it's not anything like the first lyrics. I mean, those as night as day as you could get, you know, like free love, let's go have fun, come with me, versus hey, if you're, you know, if you're just bored or you want to have some fun, don't hit me up. But if you know, if you think you're having a devil's day, then get a hold of me and I'll come save you, you know.
Exactly. Sorry, I'm a little distracted. I'm trying to log into something here so I can talk to you about it, and it's not working out. So,
I mean, I was still hoping to get the audio to load, but it still doesn't. It's terrible. Yeah, I don't know if it doesn't pop up across your delayed live feed. Maybe later go Google Pickle Rick, or I'd hate to have to save that picture or send the link anywhere, but it's just so similar to that horrible kiss. And for those of you that don't know, like, that's part of the ritual at a black mass, if I remember correctly, to have to greet the devil by kissing him on his ass. And it's also part of it was the pug and the cat cults both did that too, right? Or was it just the cat cult? I remember the cat cult, whatever that cat cult was.
There's a pug cult?
Yeah, there's a pug cult too.
And a cat cult?
Yeah.
I don't know about the pugs. What do you know about pugs?
Maybe I'll have to. I thought that was in there long. So you definitely remember the cat cult, though.
Well, I'm just saying, like, I know that okay, you have different witchcraft cults and also heretical Christian cults. in the Middle Ages being accused of doing these types of rituals where they have to kiss the devil's behind, or sometimes he will take the form of a cat or a dog or a goat, and then you have to kiss him there.
My girlfriend's still watching. She's going to slap me when I get home because we own pugs. She's going to be like, what in the world are you doing? And I make people think that we're in a pug cult. So here I've pulled it up on Wikipedia. Order of the Pug, German, Mops Orden, was a paramasonic society founded by Roman Catholics. So exactly what you just said, Tracy. I mean, this is the same type of thing. Like a one-off from Christianity. Believed that it was founded in 1740 by Clemens August of Bavaria, and that's where Adam Weishaupt was from, for those of you that are familiar with the Illuminati, to bypass the papal bull in imminente apostolatus. I don't know what that is. Let's see. That's in imminente apostolatus specula is a papal bull issued by Pope Clement the 11th. No, that's 12th, on 28th April 1738, banning Catholics from becoming Freemasons. It arose from the Jacobite Hanoverian rivalry. Okay, so the Pope put out a message, that's what a papal bull is, that says, hey, you're not allowed to be a Mason if you're a Catholic. So it looks like in 1740 they founded a cult. The Constitution of the Order of the Pug allowed women to become members as long as they were Catholic. The pug was chosen as a symbol of loyalty, trustworthiness, and steadiness. Members called themselves mops, which is German for pug. Novices were initiated wearing a dog collar and had to scratch the door to get in. The novices were blindfolded and led around the carpet with a symbol of it 9 times, while the pugs of the order barked loudly to test the steadiness of the newcomers. During the initiation, the novices also had to kiss a pug's backside under its tail as an expression of total devotion. So there you go. Yeah.
Wow. I didn't know about the Order of the Pug.
Yeah, so and I mean I think the cat one was the one that's in your Baphomet book.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
The thing you were just reading, was that you said Pope Gregory the Ninth?
Let's see. Let me mouse back over that because it's Pope Clement the 12th.
Oh, okay, never mind then. Because Gregory the Ninth was the one who declared that black cats were evil, and that's what started a holocaust of black cats in Europe. So
yeah, I'll bet.
But that's unrelated.
The Pope said black cats are evil, so when you see him, you better do them in, huh?
Yes, and we know he's infallible, so he would know.
Yeah, of course.
Until then they decided that he wasn't infallible later, but
the
and that's also they would know, right? One way or the other.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's, well, we would know if you're infallible, and if you're not, then we know, and if you are, then we know. So it's so silly. It really is. It makes me think of when I was in Scotland in Edinburgh, the tour guides talking about being thrown into the loch, the loch which is like where all the sewage went, the Grand Loch, because they would yell, guard the loo, and then throw all the sewer water into the street, and it would all run down into the loch. But I remember the tour guide said if you have red hair, or if you're left-handed, or if you're handsome or pretty, then you're under suspicion of being a witch. And so what they would do is tie your thumbs to your toes and throw you into the loch. And if I remember correctly, it's if you float, you're a witch, and if you sink, then you're not, but you die either way. So it's kind of the same concept.
Oh man.
Me having a really red beard, being left-handed and reasonably handsome, I was glad that it was far, far away from that time when I was in Scotland. I probably would have ended up with my thumbs tied to my toes in the loch.
So we can't play things live, huh? Is that the way it is?
I'll try again. I mean, some results are coming up, but the YouTube was just hanging. But let me type Don Ho Hawaii 5-0 and see if Sammy Davis Hawaii 5-0 here.
Well, but I mean, what if it was like another website? Do you think that might help?
That could.
Let me see if I can find anything on other
Oh, you mean
competing
like play an
websites.
MP3 or something? Yeah. Well, I'll try YouTube one more time to see if it wants to be nice to us here. I'll switch it over. But yeah, if you find a link, Tracy, you can always just drop it in the Twitter DMs and that'll zap it to us. Or in the Hangout. Either one is fine.
All right.
The Hangout side chat.
All right, just
I mean, I'm kind of itching to hear
I
it now
don't
too.
know what to do now.
No, I know. I want to hear the. I want to hear him sing it now that we've read the lyrics out.
Well, there's so many things going wrong right now, so I'm at a loss. Everything I try to do, there's some kind of problem with. So.
Yeah, because we were talking
Sorry
about
for that.
reviewing that movie, but if the stuff doesn't want to work.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to find right now. Another website that might have the movie we're gonna watch. But these are all YouTube links coming up so far.
Yeah, I'm gonna do the same thing.
Maybe something else will play on the YouTube instead of that specific one.
We've got everyone in horrible suspense of what this song
I'm
sounds
sorry,
like.
guys.
No, it's just the way it is. No one's doing anything wrong here. You're fine. And we're doing the same thing. I think it's really ironic that second week in a row, I mean, we're pulling it off. I guess it really is archonic intervention. They're like, these people can't hang out on the internet. Stop them, stop them.
So Jacob Bacchus said Scotland has maybe the highest ratio of redheads in the world, too. And then Jack V said, you're looking good, Sean. You witchy?
Yeah, I mean, that's why we went, it was my girlfriend's idea, and she had already had a trip planned, so we stayed longer. But while I was there, I ended up doing some genealogy research because on my mom's side of the family, we definitely have like Scottish, Irish ancestry, and so that was fun and interesting. But yeah, Edinburgh is an amazing place. If anyone has a chance to go, I would highly recommend going to Edinburgh, Scotland. It's an ancient city and it's all stacked up, straight up and down. You know, like it's built like a modern city, but all out of stone. And we did some like ghost tours and some underground tours, and
that's fun.
It was spooky. Like the one underground tour was like the lady walked up. We all had to go gather around this pillar outside in the daytime. You know, right as the sun's almost about to set. And so there's probably half a dozen of us all standing there like waiting for the tour to start. And she walks up in this like flowing dress and kind of dressed, a little bit witchy, and just screams at the top of her lungs, like as loud as she can. Like it hurt my ears that she screamed so loud because it's supposed to be a scary tour. And she had our attention. She took us on a walking tour, telling us about, like dirty, nasty people and ghosts. And then we went underground, and there was one room that you could just feel the ghosty energy coming off of it. Like she tried to get us all the crowd in there, and my girl was like, "Nah, I'm not walking in there." And the lady's like, "Why?" She's like, "No, I can already feel it. Like, nah, I'm not walking in there." It was like. It just had a heavy, dense feeling to the air, like no. It seemed colder too, like way colder than every place else right there. So.
Did you see the stuff related to Major Thomas Weir as part of that tour?
Boy, that sounds.
So he's the
familiar.
guy. Okay, he's the guy that was a Christian, and everyone thought that he was a very pious person. And he was very well known in town. And then one day he admitted that he was a devil worshiper and that he was married secretly to his own sister.
Yeah, that's how the tour started, actually. Yeah, that was the first lady. She took us down this little side street as we were headed to get underground. Yeah. Go ahead if you remember the rest of the story, because it was bad. It was like really bad.
I just remember, he admitted doing all these really horrible things, killing people and stuff, and conjuring devils, and then he had a special cane that he used to do this stuff.
Yep.
So, anyway, the reason why I know about this guy is because of my work and also my friendship and experience with Nicholas DeVere, because he said that he was not only a descendant of Thomas Weir, but also had essentially reincarnated his spirit into himself. You know, that he had conjured him up and raised his spirit and then and brought it into himself, essentially.
Oh, crazy. Okay, so DeVere from the Dragon Court, that's what he was saying, is that he was descended from and brought forth and brought into himself the spirit of that guy, Thomas Weir.
That guy.
Yeah.
Thomas Weir, and then I think it's interesting that he's named Major Thomas Weir. And I just wonder if that had anything to do with the choice of the name of the Major Tom song.
Yeah,
by Bowie.
I think it was that he wasn't a military guy too. I'm trying to remember now, but I think they said that he just gave himself the title.
Yeah, I don't remember any sort of military stories about him, so that would make sense. Yeah, I have no idea why he was called Major Thomas Weir, but
it's Major Tom.
Yeah. I wonder if the
This is ground control.
the connection.
Major Tom.
Yeah.
Ugh, it's all tied together. Yeah, our internet's really hanging, Tracy. So, you know, I'm going to read a little bit more of your document just to see what else you had in here.
Okay, good. I mean, I can't even log into Plus Ultra right now, which I don't understand. I can't log into my own website right now, so. Otherwise, I would be reading segments of that essay I wrote, where some of it I explain this stuff, but I can't even do that.
Well, I could probably bust in there in a second, but let's continue on here for a second to see what it says. So you mentioned that the song wasn't mentioned on Don Ho's wiki page. Let's see, year of the release of lyrics version of song not mentioned in the Wikipedia for Hawaii 5.0. Like you said, so it seems like they're kind of glossing over the production of this song, other than, because you obviously don't hear the lyrics on the television show. Some of us are definitely old enough to remember Hawaii 5.0, even if it's in reruns. I mean, it was a hugely popular show, and the theme song really sticks in your head, you know. So
yeah, and it's really cool song. The the version that you hear on the show, and then the Ventures version is pretty similar. But so those are cool. But yeah, the Don Ho version is very different, and I think people just heard that on the radio a few times when it came out. But here's the thing, yeah, why is it hard to find information about how to buy the original albums or repressings of them, or just find any information about the songwriters? Well, I'm wondering if it's because they don't want to pay royalties to Manson. Well, I guess they did. Well, they wouldn't have to, but they don't want to admit that it was him. But they wouldn't have to pay royalties to him because of, now we have the Son of Sam law, which means that if you've committed a really, really bad crime, then you don't get to profit from anything you've ever done, which means that other people will.
Right.
So that's what I figure. There's probably Charles Manson songs all over the place in that period of time, that I mentioned on the show before. I really think that he probably did know the Beatles, and there's quite a lot of reason to believe that. Friends they had in common, the fact that the Process Church was actively trying to get the Beatles into their fold at that time, and then right after the Process Church, they had at one point they went to Mexico to try to, I don't know, they bought a what used to be a salt factory there in this place called they named it X Tool, I think, or something. I don't know exactly how to pronounce it because it's an Aztec language, but they named it after this famous Aztec ruin that wasn't really too far away. And so they created a temple down there, and they conjured their spirits. Then they worshipped Jehovah and Satan and Lucifer and Jesus, and they conjured these things, these entities. They said and got all kinds of prophecies for the future and plans for what they were supposed to do, and that included recruiting the Beatles and other important musician figures and also movie stars from that time period. And I think that they successfully did. I mean, I know that they had Marianne Faithfull as a card-carrying member. John Phillips gave them some money, and there's plenty of evidence, really, that he was totally involved with them. John Phillips of the Mamas and the Papas. And I think the name Mamas and the Papas is a reference to the Process Church's their hierarchy. I mean, they would call themselves mother this or father that,
Right,
and
right.
then the laity were brother and sister this or that. So I kind of thought that maybe that's why the Mamas and the Papas were called that. And then with the Beatles, you can see a definite change of their in interests around this time period, right after the Process Church finished doing their rites in Mexico, and they came back to the U.S. and also, you know, they started in England, they started in London, so they came out of that whole experience and went back to their other locations, and they had a new lease on life and a new direction to go in, which was to infiltrate pop culture. And there's
was that right when they were doing Sgt. Pepper?
Yes, okay, so there's so many things in Sgt. Pepper and also Yellow Submarine, the movie, which we know that they didn't really want to do, but at that point, I think things had gotten kind of out of hand and out of their control. But you can see all these references to the Process Church's time in Mexico and their temple that was named after an Aztec structure, a famous Aztec structure that I think was part of a complex that included pyramids, you know.
Right.
And you can see. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying that you know that makes sense, because if there's some kind of magic conjuring sacrificing cult, it's not a stretch at all to go to Mexico or South America and copy the most famous sacrificial rituals of all time. I mean, when you think of human sacrifice, if you're what we call a normie or a person who doesn't delve into this stuff, that should be the first thing that comes to mind, right? Like the second movie of the Indiana Jones trilogy.
Apocalypto.
You know,
It's a pretty good one.
Yeah, I've never watched Apocalypto, but the idea of, you know, cutting out hearts and the temple steps running with blood. So it makes sense to me that Manson, Process Church, and all this would be tied directly into, you know, to mock or copy the people that went ahead of you is common in every field. So it's not like it would be weird for them to do it in this one.
Yeah, okay. Okay. And so here's another interesting thing, which is that the Aztec complex that the original X-Tool, the original Aztec temple was part of, is called the Yellow City. So all those buildings look yellow, and they have looked yellow as far as anyone knows, you know, as far back in history as anyone can remember. In this light of day, they just gleam and glow yellow, essentially. And so this makes me think about the Yellow Submarine and the fact that in the movie they actually show the Yellow Submarine crashed on top of this Aztec pyramid, which is not explained at all in the film, in the middle of Pepperland. And when they launch off into their adventure on the submarine, it basically blasts off from the top of this Aztec pyramid. And there's another Aztec temple in another Beatles cartoon. I haven't figured out exactly what year this one came out in yet, but it's got the Tomorrow Never Knows song on it. Yeah, go ahead.
So Tomorrow Never Knows is definitely on...
Rubber Soul, I think, right?
No, I think it's on Revolver.
Revolver, okay.
I'm sure it's on Revolver, because I remember that song, because that song is like heavily Indian influenced music, and they just play C, the note C. It's not, there's no changes. It's just a droning C note. The whole song is just C.
Well, they probably got one of those. What do you call it? In the Indian music, there's this one instrument that just does the drone.
Yeah, the sitar.
Is it the sitar? I thought they had another thing on there too. But okay,
well, I mean,
maybe I'm
the
wrong.
The sitar definitely has drone strings on it, so that you get this long humming, droning sound. You know.
Okay. Yeah. So And so yeah, in the Tomorrow Never Knows Beatles cartoon, they're like, you can see this temple that looks very Aztec, but then they've got these Indians dancing in it that kind of look like Northern American Indians more so, you know. So they've got all their Indians mixed up, I guess, but which is, I guess, probably typical. I'm sure there were British producers of this show, and maybe they didn't really think about it or know that much about the differences.
You know, my phone.
And then there's a moose devil creature in this cartoon. Very Baphomet-looking guy that's kind of being worshipped and is the kind of leader of these ceremonies that are taking place in the temple in that video.
So now this is in a cartoon that goes with Revolver?
This is, you know how there used to be all these Beatles cartoons that would actually play on TV in America and Britain?
Oh, I forgot my figurines, Tracy. I've got a bunch of these. I've got a bunch of these Beatles figurines. I was raised as, I mean, when I was a little boy, like I was dancing around in my underoos with my fake plastic guitar that had the Dukes of Hazzard on it, pretending that I was going to replace John Lennon in the Beatles because my mom was such a big Beatles fan. So I mean, I know a shit ton about the Beatles, and I've seen most of these cartoons. I just don't remember that one you're talking about. I remember the reference from Yellow Submarine, but not. So I'm gonna Google.
Transfer over to that.
Yeah, I'm gonna switch over where the audience can see us, and I'm gonna see if it'll bring me at least pictures of, not Rubber Soul, but Revolver Beatles cartoon, and see if we get anything. Because that's just nuts.
Look up Tomorrow Never Knows in Beatles cartoon, and you'll get stills from it at least.
Come on, computer.
But it's interesting too that it's like okay, this is the song that's most obviously about LSD because it's based on a Timothy Leary book that it's itself based on the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And the Timothy Leary, okay, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, you're supposed to read it while a person's dying to help guide their soul. And then so the Timothy Leary book, you're supposed to read it to someone while they're tripping on acid to help guide their soul through the ego death and whatnot. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, of course, they're just it's the all mocking tongue. That's what that makes me think of. You know, like we're killing your ego, all right. Wink, wink. I found one picture of this thing, but it's not very good, so I'm gonna keep looking. But yeah, this is interesting. So this is a newer Beatles cartoon. I think this might have been made. I don't know. It might have been at the same time. I just didn't see it till later. I remember this now that I've seen some still images of it. But here's Ringo doing something. Oh, he's beating a drum.
But in Yellow Submarine, all of the characters are constantly doing the devil horns hand signal to each other. So, I mean, constantly. There's like probably 100 different instances of it at least throughout the movie. So I'm just thinking, like, you could tell these guys and everyone around them were just so heavily involved in this cultish stuff. And then you have the story about John Lennon having bought, well, this is not a story. I mean, it's true. It's just an anecdote. He bought the Bramford building, which is the building that is depicted in the movie Rosemary's Baby. So he supposedly didn't know what the building was when he bought it, and someone told him afterwards while he was moving stuff in there. And I think this is the one he got shot in front of, right? And this is where they did the love-in, him and Yoko.
Right.
You know,
laying in bed to stop.
So it had a great. Yeah, it had a great impact on it. It was very important in the life of John Lennon, this building. But it started out supposedly he didn't know what it was, and when he found out that it was the Rosemary's Baby location, he supposedly wrote the words "Helter Skelter" on the wall and then covered it up with a box. So a witness saw him do this. He's like, "Whoa, heavy, man! I can't believe this is the Rosemary's Baby building." And then he writes "Helter Skelter" on the wall. So he either knew it all along, which I think is likely, or he was just then realizing it, and it was this amazing coincidence. But I mean, if you saw the previous show that I was on with you guys, all these things are connected. I totally think that Rosemary's Baby, the Beatles, and the stuff we were talking about earlier, Frank Sinatra and his crazy life, they're all interconnected. And earlier today, I just watched about half of this movie, Kid Stays in the Picture, which is a documentary about Robert Evans, who was the producer of that film, also the producer of the detective, the Frank Sinatra movie I mentioned, or one of the Frank Sinatra movies I mentioned earlier. And so I didn't realize some things about that until I just saw this film. But so he's Robert Evans, who also supposedly is the one who hired somebody to kill the other producer. What did I call him? Robert Radin? Roy Radin.
Yeah,
Roy Radin.
Roy Radin, yeah, that was it.
Okay. And supposedly is involved with the Process Church and specifically their organized crime wing, where they're doing drug deals and hiring hitmen and stuff like that. That's what this guy was involved in, and using their drug and other ill-gotten money helping to launder it by producing movies with it, such as The Cotton Club, which is the last movie Roy Radin was involved in before he got killed. So Robert Evans, also I mentioned on the last show I was on, that Robert Evans and Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate were at the last public dinner that Robert Kennedy was involved in, or last public dinner that he had before he died. So anyway, Robert Evans, okay, so he's producing the Detective and Rosemary's Baby, right? And I was telling you on the last show about how I thought that maybe Frank Sinatra actually was the one that hired Charles Manson to arrange for the murders of Sharon Tate, Polanski's wife, and all those other people that were there. And Manson has essentially admitted that someone hired him to do this, and he's also said that no one will ever know the real reason for the Manson murders because it's too big of a deal. Like too many people will be in trouble if it ever comes out, and so it'll never come out. He's kind of saying it's a state secret.
Right. Why
the Manson murders happened. And I was saying that I think Frank Sinatra might have been involved, and there's no contradiction there because Frank Sinatra his involvement in the mafia is underestimated at the very least. Like, not necessarily in some of the hardcore, very detailed books that have been written, but in the general public knowledge, people don't realize it wasn't just a casual thing. Like, this guy would do shows at the mafia conventions to provide a cover for the mafia convention, so that it's as though that it's just all about a Frank Sinatra show, and these guys are just there to see Frank Sinatra, when really they're there to have a mafia meeting.
Yeah, they're there to do business, right?
He provided the whole cover for it, and even there was this really important and famous La Cosa Nostra meeting where he literally smuggled in his suitcase millions of dollars for the mafia, on the way in the airplane. So Sinatra's a big deal. He had his phone tapped by the FBI for decades, probably forever, and knew tons of stuff, like I said, about I think JFK's murder and also Robert Kennedy. A lot of people think that the Robert Kennedy killing was a Process Church hit. And that happened, about a year before the Manson murders? It happened right after Rosemary's Baby came out. And here's what I found out today that I thought was really interesting. In order to say fuck you to Frank Sinatra, who had just divorced his wife because she persisted in being the star of Rosemary's Baby when there was a scheduling conflict. She was also supposed to be the female lead in Frank Sinatra's movie The Detective, which was also being produced by Robert Evans. So when Frank Sinatra divorced Mia Farrow, and he literally said this, he called Robert Evans, and said, "She's my old lady. She'll do what I tell her to, and she's supposed to be in my picture. So you just make sure that she's done on time, done shooting your film so that she can do mine." And then he said, again, a very quotable line, "Don't fuck with me, man." You know, this was his way of just saying, like, I'm going to be severely angry if you don't do what I say right now.
Right.
You know, I will take it as a personal affront. Whereas a normal person would think, okay, I need to do some rescheduling here to make my wife happy, right?
Right.
I mean, and it's the same producer in both movies, as if you couldn't work it out. But Frank would not work it out. And so, so anyway, yeah, Mia persisted. She did end up getting divorced. She was upset about that, but then she was cheered up because Robert Evans says, "Hey, you know, you're going to get a Oscar for this film. It's worth it." And then to say fuck you to Frank Sinatra, they scheduled Rosemary's Baby to come out on the same day as Detective.
Oh yeah.
As his film. Yes. And then they actively watched the numbers to make sure that they did better than he did. And of course they did. You know, that film was so much more successful than The Detective, which is, you know, probably most people don't remember. So all of that was done in direct competition with Frank's movie, even though they had the same producer, just to say fuck you to Frank Sinatra. So it just, again, everything that I learned today built upon my belief that it's quite possible Frank Sinatra was the guy that paid Charles Manson to kill Sharon Tate, who was Roman Polanski's new wife, because he felt that Roman Polanski had ruined his marriage, and
that's fuck you
had
too.
not. Yes. And then I learned, okay, there was a fellow in your chat last week who dropped some very important information that we followed up on a little bit. I don't have the book yet, but I did realize who the author was that he was talking about. He said it was Virginia Graham.
Right.
And wrote the book about Frank Sinatra and the Manson family.
Right. She was like a prostitute or a call girl. I'm just going from memory. I didn't go look back at the comment.
Yes. So it was after the show, I finally put it together who was the author of that book and what that guy was talking about. So Virginia Graham is the woman that Susan Atkins confessed to in prison, where she's the one that got the story supposedly from Susan Atkins, Manson family member, where Susan said, "Oh, we were planning on killing all these other famous people too, and we were going to make purses out of Frank Sinatra's skin. He was going to be one of the ones." Okay, well, so it turns. I already thought Virginia Graham was weird because I had read in the Helter Skelter book by Vincent Bugliosi, the prosecutor, that Virginia Graham had coincidentally already had an acquaintance with Jay Sebring, who was he was the hairdresser who was Sharon Tate's ex-boyfriend that was still hanging around the house and was one of the people that got killed there. And Jay Sebring, I know, had Frank Sinatra as a client. You know, he was a hairdresser to the stars, and Frank Sinatra was one of his clients. And then also it had come up that Virginia Graham had also accidentally or coincidentally looked at that very house when she was considering a place to move to, because it was up for rent at some point. And it just...
That's nuts.
Yeah, okay, this prostitute can afford the same place that the, Hollywood people are living at. I don't know. Why was she looking at it? And what are the odds of that? Okay, so I found that very odd. I remember highlighting that in the book. Like, okay, that sticks out. And so then when your friend or your fan mentioned this other book that Virginia Graham herself, the person in prison, the call girl, had written, and it says apparently in the promotional material for the book that she had Frank Sinatra as a client, for her prostitution. So, in other words, she had sex with Frank Sinatra for money. Okay, so if he was the one who, came up with this whole thing with the Manson family, killing Polanski's wife and all these other people, which I highly suspect, then does it not make sense that he would have this call girl, smuggled into the prison where Susan Atkins was, have her place so that she could pretend to be a witness, and she could point the the fault, the blame somewhere else by saying that Frank Sinatra was supposed to be a victim, So that just takes the attention off of him, which, it may seem so ridiculous or far removed from our thoughts now. It might not have been back then, because again, the FBI would have already had his phone tapped. He's still involved in mafia shit. He was, probably till the day he died.
Well, you don't get to get out of it.
And Robert Kennedy had just died, and that was also suspicious. And the people that were suspected were all friends of his. So, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's just, you don't get to retire from or step away from any type of mob, mafia, gang organization. If you're, especially what you said earlier, totally rings true to me, that Frank Sinatra is the front for the mob, and that puts him in an enormously powerful position, because he's willing to front out his whole life and make it look like the best entertaining, crooning, good time, slow jazz club thing, so that everyone can do their dirt. And so if you're in that position, no one gets to take it lightly, because you're fucking Frank. You're the one that has to go stand there and act like everything's cool and sing, and hang out with with the Rat Pack and make movies, when that right behind one door, if it's not locked like it's supposed to be, people are going to walk in on drugs, sex, murder, money, guns, and everything you could possibly imagine, and you're the one that's keeping it cool, so that's...
Well, and he also, I think, was involved in helping the federal government, helping the Kennedy administration to quiet up some things that they really didn't want to get out, involving everything from their attempts on Castro, which, they're happy to talk about now, but they didn't want to at the time. And then, of course, the dalliances with Marilyn Monroe and others. Well, he knew all about that stuff. And as I mentioned on the last show that I was on, seems to have been involved in an event that preceded Marilyn Monroe's death, and seemed to be involved an attempt to shut her up about things she knew about the Kennedys and what they were doing. So, I mentioned that it seems like he and the mobster Sam Giancana both, drugged her and raped her on camera and tried to use that to quell her. And then she died just a few days later. Peter Lawford, another one of his friends, another Rat Pack guy, and married to the president's sister. Peter Lawford was involved in the cover-up of that. In fact, even Bobby Kennedy himself was on the scene the night of her death, involved personally in cleaning up the scene, making sure that everything was quiet. I'm not saying he was necessarily picking up things out of her room, but he and Lawford were both stopped by the cops, essentially speeding away from the scene of her death the night that it happened. And they were let go because it's the Attorney General, but go ahead.
I turned my mic up because one of our friends in chat said something, so that's quite a bit louder. Does it sound okay to you, Tracy? I mean, I don't know what it...
Sounds okay to me.
All right, but so you're saying that RFK was there in the process of trying to keep it cool when they were cleaning up after Marilyn's death?
Yep, yeah. So I'm saying Lawford, Sinatra, and both Kennedy boys shared this secret, in addition to several other mafia people. They knew this. They were involved. Frank Sinatra was personally involved in trying to shut Marilyn up, and he would have known exactly, what happened with her death and everything. So he's just perfectly poised, so that he doesn't have to worry. I would think at that point, or that's probably what's in his mind anyway. He's untouchable because he's got the mafia, he's got the government. No one's gonna fuck with him. Not necessarily that he's friends with all those people, but that he's got them all compromised,
Right.
Because of things he knows.
And the other thing I was going to say on all of that while we're talking about RFK is I remember reading about Sirhan, that's his alleged assassin. I remember reading about him. I saw it somewhere years ago that he claimed that he was brainwashed for months in advance to perform the killing. And so I was speculating, like, all right, well, let's look that up. And it was on Wikipedia, like, not even like deep research. Like, it's right on Wikipedia that he had journal entries, like, repeating, you know, kill Robert Kennedy over and over again in his journals, and then went and did it, got thrown in prison, and said, hey, man, I was conditioned for months to do this, and I don't even really know what the hell I was doing. I was under hypnosis or whatever. And so to me, that kind of still ties in with the whole idea of MK Ultra style brainwashing and manipulation, ties directly into the whole, all of the processed church. It's all one big bubbling brew of shit. It's not like it's all separate from each other, you know. The whole thing's one great big spider web.
Okay, so here's some interesting things about that. The guy that is suspected of having been the one to hypnotize Sirhan is this famous hypnotist whose name was William Joseph Bryan. And another case that William Joseph Bryan was involved in, which is just amazing to me, is the Boston Strangler case. So I don't know the background enough. It doesn't make any sense to me, but it's in Wikipedia. Again, you know, it's history. We know this happened. Albert DeSalvo, the accused Boston Strangler, confessed to those crimes under hypnosis. I didn't even know you could do that.
Whoa.
And it was William Bryan who hypnotized him. Okay, so, and then, yeah, there's some evidence tying him to Sirhan. Sirhan said essentially yes. And then William Bryan, there's witnesses who say that he admitted to being involved with Sirhan. So it's kind of hearsay, but it's like he admitted it to his friends, but then he wouldn't go into details, you know, because then he kind of got nervous and realized he was spilling the beans too much.
A bridge too
Well,
far.
another.
I'm seeing something crazy. Something crazy in the chat here. Two Buller. Does it say Buller? Two Buller Bellies says Sirhan was taking instructions from Manly Palmer Hall, literally. So that's interesting. I've never heard of that. Now that's crazy. For those of you that might not know, Manly P. Hall is probably the most famous occult researcher before the internet hit big. I mean, he became an honorary 33rd degree Mason. He's like, you can find hours and hours of lectures of him talking about all of the mystery school secrets and all of the esoteric rituals and the rites of passage and all of the mythologies. So the idea that somehow Sirhan was being instructed by Manly P. Hall, like, whoa, like my brain's just trying to like encompass that right now.
So it doesn't appear to be the case anymore, but a few weeks ago, when you would look up William Joseph Bryan on Google, instead of the picture that you get now, you would get a picture of this other fellow. And it was just labeled wrong. You know, it was David Ferry, who's the guy involved in suspected of being involved in JFK's murder, and Joe Pesci plays him in the movie JFK. And
right, this is the guy with the Trump hair.
Yeah, the guy with the crazy hair, right?
And the mice.
So it was very odd that, like, you know, when I was looking this stuff up, I probably spent an hour trying to figure out, is this really a picture of William Bryan or is this a picture of David Ferry that's been mislabeled, you know? Because it was the same picture on both listings. So, but yeah, now you see like a picture that's definitely a different person for William Bryan. But yeah, for a while it was the picture of David Ferry came up, which is interesting because David Ferry was also is kind of more of an amateur hypnotist, I would say, than William Bryan. It was his job, you know. But Ferry was also he was one of those guys I mentioned last time that was like actually mixing potions and personally involved in trying to poison Castro on behalf of the CIA. So yeah, all these guys are, they all knew each other, all involved in the same kinds of stuff, all involved in the same operations, really. Then you mentioned Manly P. Hall. I wonder, like, when did he die? Because I actually thought he would have been dead by then, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, because I've listened to lectures with Manly P. Hall that are way back. I mean, he'd have had to been like in his early 20s to still be alive.
Well, okay, he died in 1990, so I guess it could have been.
William Ferry is the same. He's the one associated with the conspiracy to assassinate JFK. Same guy. I just looked him up here on Wikipedia. I know you
David Ferry.
Yeah. So just so everybody knows, David Ferry. It says he died 1967. American pilot, alleged New Orleans District Attorney Jim Garrison to have been involved in a conspiracy to assassinate JFK. Also alleged that Ferry knew Lee Harvey Oswald, denied involvement. Decades later, photos emerged establishing that Ferry had been the same Civil Air Patrol unit as Oswald, but critics argued this doesn't prove anything. So this guy's all wrapped in. And you said this is the guy that was mixing potions and trying to help them kill Castro?
Yes.
Interesting.
Which is something that Marilyn Monroe just had quite a lot of detail about in her diary that disappeared from the office that it was being kept in after when they were investigating her death. So many things that disappeared related to Marilyn Monroe's death. I just got, really deep into the book that's about that. It's just amazing. Well, it's very similar to the JFK thing. His brain went missing, right?
Right.
Marilyn Monroe's organs went missing from the coroner's office. And it was the same, the coroner that did her body was involved in several other famous people, and some of them are even people we've talked about tonight. I wish I could remember them.
Yeah, you see
I can't,
that a lot. You see that a lot with the coroners and the investigators and oh yeah, the guy that did this also did that. I mean, it seems like that's always popping up with school shootings, with murder cases, with famous high-profile people, etc. Seems like there's always one guy in a white lab coat that's like, yeah, I'm the same guy. I lost JFK's brain and Marilyn Monroe's organs. We don't know where any of that stuff went.
Oh yeah, I remember. Okay, it was Sharon Tate. Well, there were several others, but significantly Sharon Tate. He did her body too. And then one of the guys that was on the scene first to help clean up, the Marilyn Monroe scene was her attorney, Mickey Rudin. Rudin. and that's the same. It was also Frank Sinatra's attorney. So that's who delivered the divorce papers on the set of Rosemary's Baby, was Mickey Rudin. And just to kind of really tie everything together, I know I mentioned this on another show, but I don't think it was your show, so I ought to bring it up here. The Manson 2 Mickey Mouse connection. You mind if I get into that here?
No, go right ahead.
Okay, so David Berkowitz and other people who became whistleblowers telling Maury Terry and other investigators about the Process Church and how they hire hitmen and they're involved supposedly in drug running and also human trafficking, snuff films, and child porn. And that they had made several films of the 44 caliber, the Son of Sam shootings. There's actually snuff films of those supposedly floating around somewhere, for high price collectors. They're in the possession of somebody. At one point, people thought that that was the reason why Roy Radin was killed. They thought that he had some of the Son of Sam killings on film. So anyway, you have David Berkowitz telling this story to Maury Terry, and one of the things he said was that there was this fellow in his circle of people that was involved in some of the Son of Sam killings and involved in some other killings that they did, who he called Manson 2. And this guy, that was his nickname in the cult, Manson 2. And one of the informants that Maury Terry had, the guy who wrote The Ultimate Evil, the book about this stuff, one of the informants suggested that possibly this guy was the same one who also had a nickname of Mickey Mouse. And this is very significant for all the symbolic reasons that I talked about on the last show. And one of the things that I think may back that up, the idea that Manson 2 is the same guy referred to by their cult as Mickey, that he had both of these terms as his nicknames. One of my pieces of evidence for that is actually modern, and it's a piece of jewelry that was commissioned and purchased by Lil Uzi Vert. You know this guy?
Yeah, no, I remember you talking about this briefly. Did you get to see that picture I just put up there? Somebody like some artist made a beautiful screen print or a design of Manson's head on Mickey Mouse's body. So I'm gonna look for this necklace you're talking
Mickey
about.
Manson.
But if
I've seen that. I think I've seen the one you're talking about.
So,
yeah, I've seen it.
So that's just crazy. I was just like searching along with you. There's a patch too here. I see like somebody's embroidery patch they can put on their like punk rock jacket. But let me look. Lil Uzi Vert.
No, don't spell the word little.
No, Lil.
It's got to be Lil.
Lil Uzi Vert Manson 2. No good. Oh, whoops.
Oh, well, just look up. Marilyn. Nobody knows it's Manson 2.
Oh, okay.
Nobody's figured that out yet, except me, and maybe I've talked about it now, so maybe some other people. But
so Lil Uzi Vert, Marilyn Manson.
Yeah, and then there's this necklace that he bought about a year ago. That's like encrusted with diamonds, and what it is it's a representation of the way that Marilyn Manson depicted himself for his album Golden Age of Grotesque that came out maybe 2007 or earlier in the 2000s, you know. And for that album, and there was a tour that went along with it. There was a photo shoot with a famous photographer that went along with it. It was all about Marilyn Manson dressing up as an evil Mickey Mouse. And he also put blackface makeup on, thereby revealing that he had already read about the origin of Mickey Mouse and how he was supposedly designed to look like a white actor in blackface. So you can tell that Marilyn Manson for sure knows about sort of the dark origins of Mickey, and I see all sorts of clues on that album, Golden Age of Grotesque, indicating that Marilyn Manson knows about the evil Mickey Mouse connections with Mac the Knife and things like that.
Right. I've got the image on the screen just so you know. I know you can't see it, but so I've got there's a side-by-side image of Marilyn Manson dressed as Mickey Mouse with his big shit-eating grin, and then the perfectly blown up and matched Lil Uzi Vert necklace with the numeral 2 right in the middle of Marilyn Manson's forehead. So
yeah, so you see the number 2, and I don't know if anyone's ever asked Mr. Vert why he has this 2 there. I don't know if anyone's ever figured it out before, but to me it just screams out.
Maybe we should at him on Twitter. I'll find a good link to what you're talking about, and we'll add him on Twitter and see what he says.
Well, I'll tell you what, I doubt if he would see it, because famously he only follows one other person on Twitter, and that's Marilyn Manson.
Oh yeah.
So you can tell he's like, he wants you to look at him, he doesn't want to look at you, right?
Right.
So anyway, I don't know if it's possible to communicate with this guy, and also, it's easier to communicate with Marilyn, I would say. And here's why, is because I could tell, and I knew this like probably 10 years ago, I could tell that he's been paying attention to my stuff. And the reason why is because I'll put out a book, and then the symbolism I talk about in the book will show up in his next album, Wow. So, well, we have friends in common. It's not really surprising to me at all that he would have been reading my stuff, and we're interested in the same subjects, I would say. So.
Well, you interviewed Danny Carey one time, didn't you?
I did not. I printed a interview that someone else did of Danny Carey, and that's the guy from Tool.
Yeah,
but
no,
yeah, I did also print another interview from his, I think, drummer Pogo, Marilyn Manson's drummer Pogo. So I did at one point in my magazine, Daggerbird's Revenge, print an interview from him. But I'm not from another member of the Marilyn Manson band. But I was not the person who conducted the interview. I've never actually met the man, but yeah, I'm 1 degree away from him, and it's not. It's not weird to me at all that he's read my stuff,
No, yeah, it makes sense. That's why I said something about, because I know that Danny Carey interview came up, but I mean, these guys all swim in the same pond. Tool is very, very occult. I mean, we were big heavy metal kids when we were younger, and not even that long ago. I mean, I'm not a rabid Tool fan. I think I'm kind of disgusted by Tool in general, but I do appreciate a lot of their songs, and I've covered some of their songs in a band, 6 or 7 years ago. So it's not like all these guys are passing around looking at and involved in whatever's on the cutting edge and not necessarily what's in the mainstream, and that is you. You're the one that's on the cutting edge. You might not have your book in the New York Times bestseller list, but and I know we've promoted it plenty, especially the Baphomet book, but I can't emphasize it enough that it's like an encyclopedia of the real, like, it's the bottom line on following the story of the Holy Grail, in my opinion. That's, people don't necessarily put 2 and 2 together, but that's what happens. You're like, I'm curious about the Holy Grail. Where does it end up? Like, well, it ends up with John the Baptist's head being an idol that teaches you how to make money out of nothing. That's where it ends up.
And then Marilyn Manson, I never, I hope that hope he's not listening, honestly, because I'll tell you, like, I've never really gotten into any of the music, and I listen to lots of different types of music. I'm pretty open, but I never got into it enough. But I could look. I also haven't listened to all the albums, so like maybe there's something in there that I would like. But I know that I've seen. I've spent some time looking at lyrics now, and I've seen some of his album covers. I've absorbed some of this stuff, and there's a website that's all about picking his things apart for occultism, and written by an occultist. So it's not all like conspiracy theories, and it's not all negative against Marilyn Manson. It's someone actually just trying to figure out what it's all about, and they've done a very good job. So it's called Nacht Cabaret. All in like the German way of saying night cabaret. And this website will just, you could spend hours and hours reading it because it'll tell you all about alchemy and stuff in the context of analyzing Marilyn Manson.
Cool, okay.
And I've used it many times. I've used this website many times, not studying Marilyn Manson, but just studying subjects related to alchemy. I'll end up on this website where they've gone into detail about some of the same things that I'm researching. And turns out, yeah, their sources are like ancient alchemical manuscripts and Marilyn Manson. So I think Marilyn Manson is really on the cutting edge of being able to interpret some of these really old occult documents, because he has the self-control, I think, to hide it in these lyrics and in these album covers, and wait for other occultists to decode it. And he's not out there writing articles. He doesn't do interviews explaining it. He keeps it all to himself, but you can tell he knows. He knows a lot. And he's, he was friends with Anton LaVey when he was alive. He was a, high priest in the Church of Satan, which back then, all you had to do to be a high priest in the Church of Satan, I heard, was either donate $1,000 to them or more, or be really famous. So,
and he's close friends. I know he's close friends with Johnny Depp, and I mean, if you don't realize that Johnny Depp is obviously a devout Satanist or completely immersed in the occult, then you're just blind. You're not looking. I mean, it's very obvious. And they were all hanging out with Hunter Thompson, whose reputation precedes him in the same. I mean, Hunter Thompson, if people don't know, came up in the Franklin cover-up, which is a much older but really popular case of the whole child sex trafficking, satanic sacrifice stuff. And his name come up third party as someone who had been the cameraman, allegedly, of making snuff films, and you know the people involved. What's the senator's name? I can't remember the senator. John DeCamp. I remember listening to an interview with Alex Jones like way back in the day, and John DeCamp didn't even know who Hunter Thompson was. He just dropped his name because he was the guy. There was this guy Hunter Thompson doing this or that, and Alex Jones was the one on the interview that was like, "You mean the famous writer?" And they kind of like had a epiphany, aha moment right there in the interview of realizing that it all ties together.
Wow.
But I'm pretty sure Marilyn Manson was friends with him too.
Oh yeah, yeah. Manson and Depp for sure are friends, and yes, Depp and Thompson very close were, and you know.
Yeah, because Depp organized his funeral to fire his ashes out of a cannon with his little thumb symbol. He had a fist with two thumbs. Is Hunter Thompson's symbol.
Yeah, and well, okay, Hunter Thompson's death was all like confirmation that he was involved in this this thing that you were just describing, where a kid who had been supposedly at Bohemian Grove and was involved in kids, you know, being abused there and then actually being murdered on camera for snuff films. This is what he's, you know, the kid's name was Paul Bonacci.
Oh yeah,
so this
yeah.
This is one of those guys that was, you know, they testified against the people they accused of perpetrating this, or some of the people that they were able to name, and actually got censured by the judge and told, "You must be lying, and therefore I'm going to, you know, charge you with perjury." And some of them did jail time for telling what happened to them. So Bonacci's one of those guys. Anyway, so Bonacci had said that Hunter Thompson was was on the airplane ride back from Bohemian Grove, and that Hunter Thompson had been one of the guys filming.
Yep, that was it.
And then he said, what's his name? Johnny Gosch was also on the airplane. So, and Johnny Gosch is a kid that was kidnapped in the 1980s, and I think it happened in North Dakota. It was very famous. No, it happened in Des Moines, Iowa. I'm sorry. You know, it was on America's Most Wanted at the time. Like everybody knew, you know, it was one of these high-profile cases.
He's the most high-profile name in that, and the whole Franklin cover-up is Johnny Gosch.
Right. Okay. So, right before Hunter Thompson killed himself, the story of Johnny Gosch made the papers, not the big papers, but the alternate weekly paper. You know, like every city has a little rag that is put out for free. So this was one of those, and they interviewed Noreen Gosch, who was Johnny Gosch's mother. And Noreen Gosch has had this story that a man who claimed to be her grown son came and visited her one night after having been missing for decades.
Yeah, I remember now. I remember.
Okay, so she told me this story when I interviewed her, like in year 2000, I would say. And then more details came later. And why? And that year was what was it? Like 2005. 2005. It was like a year into the Bush W administration. Okay, and so what happened was there was a scandal. There was a scandal with a journalist who showed up in the White House press pool.
Yeah, Jeff Gannon. And Talon News. It was called Talon News, and it was like a total government front PR. Like it was the beginning of what we're seeing now, where everybody softballs questions and everybody's owned, and there's no real journalism. But anyway, yeah. So.
But it was very loosely put together. Like they didn't think anyone would follow up on anything, and so they didn't put a lot of effort into trying to build up the front here. So this guy shows up in the White House press pool, and no one's ever seen him before, you know. And he asks some questions to the president, and the other reporters are like, "Where the fuck did this guy come from? And why is he asking these stupid questions?"
Exactly.
Isn't there a picture of Bush kissing him on the cheek? somewhere?
I don't know. Is there?
I don't know. I don't remember that.
I think I saw one.
Well, I know that, like, okay, after everyone started wondering who this guy was, you know, other reporters started Googling his name and trying to trace Talon News and everything. And I think what they found was, like, Talon News was like this blog that had maybe 1 or 2 posts on it, you know? And then Jeff Gannon was just a pen name. And that guy, the first thing you find when you look at him, or look back then, what you would find is his postings that he had made for his call boy business that he was running. He was pimping himself out as a military-themed prostitute. So he would dress up in his fatigues, you know, and show you a good time if you were gay.
How much? Here's a picture, you know, I'm sure he's not available anymore, folks, and he doesn't look like this, but there, let me fade this over and get my face off the screen. There is Jeff Gannon in his tighty-whities with his flat-top haircut and his dog tags. And if I go back one picture from there, I don't know if we found a kiss or not, but here is definitely George Bush. That's the one that looks like a kiss right there at the top.
Kiss him on the
so
head.
He's like touching him and kissing him. He's got his hand on his neck. Some affectionate gestures from Bush Jr. to Jeff Gannon here, without any doubt. Like there we go.
It's like they know each other.
Jim is right. There it is. Yeah, it is very much like they know each other. And
well, yeah. So okay. Well, so when this Alterna Weekly newspaper interviewed Noreen Gosh in 2005, she said, hey, you know, this guy who claimed to be my son visited me years ago in the middle of the night. He only stayed for 1 night, but he told me he'd been kidnapped. He's still being controlled by some cartel that makes child porn, and they prostitute them to the rich and famous and powerful people all over the world. And they're Satanists, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, just so people know, that's the whole allegation of the Franklin cover-up. It was published in, the Washington Post, like receipts, credit card receipts from male prostitution underage call boys at the White House. And this isn't like some far-out rag-free newspaper. It was a major publication and a front-page story of like, hey, how come Bush Sr. has underage gay call boys at the White House, and here's the credit card receipt, right? I mean, that's to bring the whole thing full circle, that's what makes Jeff Gannon coming out later being so strange.
Yeah, so, I mean, you had this scandal show up before, first in the 80s, it was part of the savings and loan scandal, really,
right?
Because it came out because this is what some of the money was tied up in. And some of the investigations ended up revealing some of this stuff, and then it boiled over again during Bush Sr.'s administration, which you described. Yes, there was a White House call boy scandal that came and went. You know, not very much attention to it, even from the liberal media. And then Bush Jr. comes along, and then you have this scandal with Jeff Gannon. But this in the MSM, the scandal was just that you have this obvious shill being put in to the White House press pool to ask what they thought were probably leading questions, and everything had been set up ahead of time. But then you have Noreen Gosh coming and saying, well, there's more to it than that, because this guy, Jeff Gannon, looks exactly like the guy that visited me and claimed he was my son, Johnny Gosh. Now, they both have the same initials, J and G, Johnny Gosh, Jeff Gannon, and the real alleged name of this person who worked for Talon News, Gannon, well, his driver's license says James Guckert. So there you go. Again, you have a JG. Now, okay, so we have these bits of circumstantial evidence, and then you have the testimony of Noreen Gosh, which you then have to just either believe or not. And, yes, she's the mother of a victim, so you kind of tend to be sympathetic. But then, you can't, that doesn't really mean anything, because people can be wrong, and especially if they want to believe something. But it's all very coincidental. And then, so this article comes out in this Denver newspaper, and I think within a few days, Hunter Thompson killed himself.
Yep.
Now he had been mentioned just sort of briefly in passing in the article that was about Noreen Gosh's claims. And you would think if there was nothing to it, then it wouldn't bother him at all, because, you know, it's just some weird person making a weird claim. You don't really have to be afraid of anything about it. So
just the kind of thing you'd expect too is, I mean, he lived a wild, crazy, drug-addled life, so it's not like he'd be shocked that someone's implicating him in almost anything.
I suppose, but yeah, I mean, what's amazing is it just takes time. It takes time for everything to fall together. So I think now everything is so much more crystal clear than it was in 2005. So, you know, but at that time, 2005, one of the other key things that happened right after Hunter Thompson kills himself, the next thing that happens is that that newspaper that published that story went out of business for like 2 weeks. And they came back with like a new name and a totally different staff, and they never touched that subject again. And, you know, they killed all online versions of that story that they'd written. And it was just as though publishing that story ruined the newspaper, and they had to, you know, restructure in order to stay in business.
Yeah, they got Frank Sinatra.
Exactly.
Jan and Dean.
And you know, yeah, Hunter Thompson either just knew that, you know, I can't. It could have been anything. Could have been either he felt genuinely guilty, which I think is unlikely, or he just felt that his number was up, or he was suicided, like someone just stood there, you know, saying, "Okay, I'm gonna do this to your wife if you don't do this to yourself."
I remember that being the major speculation. Lots and lots of people. I remember this part. So Hunter Thompson, at the time that this was happening, was writing for ESPN. He had published a really strange piece in the autumn time as football season was almost starting about how kids were getting kidnapped this time of year. Like, if you can find that article, it's interesting, you know, whatever he published. It was still, like, kind of in the realm of sports and everything, but it still had all this kind of underlying meaning and esoteric hinting around. And then right after he died, it was wildly speculated that someone had come in and either shot him. I remember his son, right after he was shot, rushed outside with a shotgun and fired off a shot. And they said later that he had done that as like a grieving / celebratory ritual, which I thought was strange, you know, like why would you do that? You know, my dad just blew his brains out, I'm going to go discharge a shotgun. You know, more likely that he's chasing someone and trying to kill him, or you shoot back, you know. But that Hunter Thompson was working on 2 main articles at the time, and one was about the dots not connecting for the mainstream version of the 9/11 attack, and the other one was about big-time human trafficking stuff tied into the military contractors, which is a very real thing. That's the reason I voted for Cynthia McKinney. She's the only person I ever voted in a presidential election for that I can remember, and it was because she was questioning Rumsfeld on C-SPAN or whatever. Like, how come we're still paying Dynacorp when they're supposed to be suspended because they're involved in human trafficking? And they closed the meeting and came back in a private session because she was calling them on the carpet.
I'm surprised he had the nerve to talk about that then, if he was guilty of involvement in these other things. So, well, who knows?
Well, I always thought it was potentially kind of a penance or bringing it full circle. Like, you know, I don't think Hunter S. Thompson, the way that I've read some of his books and I've looked at his media and interview, you know, I've kind of had a love-hate relationship with Hunter Thompson. And I would say that, in my own personal opinion, is that he's not a person absent of emotions and feelings like a sociopath. Like, if he's involved in all this stuff, he knows he's burning and hurting his soul to do it, and he's doing it anyway. You know, I kind of see that as the symbol of his whole life. Is that I'm not going to write the story as a third-party absent observer. I know I'm going to have an effect on a story if I write it, so I'm going to affect it as much as I see fit. You know, I see that as his whole gonzo thing. That's what it is, and I think he took it way farther than anyone would ever want to possibly fucking imagine. Like, terrible shit.
Yeah.
Well, I watched. I've never read the books, but I did. Okay, I watched Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas when it first came out in the theaters, and I think I fell asleep. But because it was just like one big long drug experience, you know, it was kind of. At the time, it didn't mean much to me, but then I watched it recently because I knew there was a scene where he references adrenochrome. So I found the scene, and what adrenochrome is, for those that don't know, is it's a byproduct of the human body, you know, and it's a hormone, and it contains adrenaline, and is it supposedly. I say supposedly because this part is mainly hearsay, that it supposedly can be harvested from a living body and then ingested as a drug. Now, Hunter Thompson mentioned this in a book, in the Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas book, which is a kind of a fictionalized version of things that really happened to him.
Right. Well, they say it in the movie too. I mean, it's really hard to follow the dialogue, but we used to watch that movie over and over again, and they sit there and do the adrenochrome, and if you catch what he's mumbling under his breath with Benicio del Toro, it's all about them getting the adrenochrome from Satanists who harvest it from a body that they're torturing at the moment that it's most tortured, and, you know, like they give you the whole story in the movie, but it's really hard to catch.
And I thought the other interesting thing about that scene is that when they do it, of course, you're seeing, you know, from the perspective of the Hunter S. Thompson based character, who I forget what they called him. Well, I forget what his character's name was, but it's Hunter, right?
Yeah, Dr.
So,
Gonzo.
Huh?
I thought it was Dr. Gonzo, but anyway, go ahead.
Gonzo's the lawyer. Dr. Gonzo is what he calls the lawyer.
Okay.
So I forget what his name was. But at any rate, because Dr. Gonzo is the one that's supplying all the drugs, right? That's why he's called doctor, even though he's actually a lawyer. But anyway, so when he first takes a hit of it, he starts to hallucinate, and of course he's been hallucinating throughout the whole movie because he's on various drugs, you know, from beginning to end.
Full of drugs, right?
But in particular, when he does the adrenochrome, that's when his friend starts to turn into a reptilian creature, and then he becomes a satyr, like a devil with horns and everything.
Right.
And so, so I thought, well, if this is his way of depicting this, and he's actually telling the truth about something that he did, which was consume some human body product that his lawyer friend had gotten from a client that was a Satanist. And in the story, in the movie, it says, like, his client, the lawyer's client, couldn't afford to pay him, so he paid him an adrenochrome. So if this had actually happened, and Hunter S. Thompson is telling you what it's really like to be on this stuff, and it causes you to have hallucinations of people transforming into reptilians and devils, then that would go right along with some of the claims made by victims of SRA, satanic ritual abuse, and they say they're forced to drink blood, which would contain adrenaline and other hormones. It makes sense. What the claim is about adrenochrome explains the point of satanic rituals, torturing someone, making them as scared as possible, and then drinking the blood, especially if it's fresh, even before they've actually died, because you're getting the hormones directly from them, and you're getting a rush off of the fear that they're feeling. And some of these victims of SRA say that, the elite of the world are really reptilian creatures, and they transform during their rituals, and they become reptiles, and they become devils. And this is really what all of our mythology points to, the myths about dragons and all these or kind of chimera-like creatures that used to be the gods of the ancient world, that they're part animal and part human, and that they can shapeshift, which there are quite a few myths about that. So victims of SRA sometimes say, oh, this is real because I've seen it. I've seen them in the rituals transforming. But what if the victims are also forced to drink blood and they're all tripping, and the stuff that they're ingesting is making them have these hallucinations? So maybe no one's actually transforming into a reptile, but because they're all drinking blood, they see this stuff, and so that could just explain all the imagery, because it's part of the trip that you go on when you do this kind of ritual. See what I'm saying?
I do, totally, and I'm looking at the photography from that scene in the movie at the same time. I had one image here of I remember the devil imagery, but there's not a lot of screen captures, but here's one like perfectly satanic looking image of Benicio del Toro, and it is totally that scene. Like, I remember this builds up because this other picture here of his eyes changing, it's like they're sitting there doing it and they're having this drug-addled conversation while they're doing it, and Benicio del Toro slowly is transitioning into the devil. So, I mean, that perfectly lines up with what you're describing.
And then the Hunter Thompson character encourages him to get something even more hardcore, and he says, what we ought to get? We should get some extract of pineal. So he tries to encourage his friend to.
This adrenochrome's not doing it for me anymore, man. We gotta get some extract of pineal.
Well, because the lawyer had said that when his Satanist client offered him this, it was like the offer you can't refuse, right? He didn't want to say no, because he said he might use a letter opener and take my pineal gland out and eat it. Right. And that's what prompted Hunter Thompson to say, we should get some of that stuff. So,
Tracy, I mean, we need to leave everybody at a cliffhanger here for a second, because I've got to step to the restroom.
Okay.
Here, I'll at least hand you over to Jim. You guys can keep going for a second if you're all right, but this is nuts. We might have started out like with the wheels slowly riding on the road, folks, but we're flying down the fucking highway now.
Yeah, I saw that. I heard, I don't know if it's true, but they manufacture synthetic adrenochrome.
Who does?
I don't know. I was just kind of researching it, and somebody said that they found some on the black web.
Okay.
But who knows? If it's real, if it's true. It was somebody was commenting about being in the rave party scene and ordering it from the black web. But
yeah, I wonder how you know if it's real or not. And
yeah,
I have no idea what you would need to do to synthesize that. But yeah, what I think is interesting is that these stories about SRA were not popular at all. I don't think they've been heard at all by anyone. I mean, when I think about SRA, I think about McMartin Preschool, right? I think that's what really started it. So, in terms of people knowing about it and talking about it. So, for Hunter Thompson to write this stuff, and long before anyone was talking about it, and then for the SRA stories that came out in the 80s and 90s perfectly match what he's talking about, and yet no one mentions that because no one was going back to that novel back then. No one was thinking about it. It all lends credibility to the stories that people have told about being abused at elite parties, and also just various satanic cults that are involved in illegal stuff.
Yeah.
For all that stuff to match up now in 2018, when we compare all the records and what people have been saying throughout the years, it's just amazing that, okay, there's no reason why Hunter Thompson would have made this up, and there's no reason why the SRA alleged victims from the 80s and 90s would have made this stuff up for it to perfectly match what Hunter Thompson was saying, because they probably hadn't read that. No one, not everybody has read Hunter S. Thompson stuff, and until the Fear and Loathing movie came out, not really many people were talking about it in the 80s and 90s. So, I don't know. It's kind of amazing to me. And there's another mention of something, because when you look up adrenochrome, okay, I looked it up like this year because people were talking about it in conspiracy world this year. People were claiming, this is what the elite do. This is why they're so fucked up all the time, is because they're drinking this stuff. So that's when I first looked it up. And so if you go to Wikipedia, it's like they say, this isn't real, but it's mentioned in a couple of fictional novels. And that's the word on the street. It's kind of like, or not the word on the street, the word according to, the intelligentsia of modern times, I guess.
Wikipedia and Snopes say it's fake, so you can go back to sleep now, folks.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, well, this is just an urban legend, and it's all from this Hunter S. Thompson novel, and then it also says, it's also mentioned in Clockwork Orange, where they call it adrenochrome, and it's one of the numerous human body-derived drugs that are served at the milk bar. And well, I guess I haven't read the thing. Is it like, are they actually derived from human body, or is it like synthesized hormones in the Clockwork Orange? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if it says. Does my mask affect the microphone? I can't tell.
I don't know. It's affecting me in a mental way, but it doesn't seem to be affecting the microphone.
Welcome to RX Only Picture Show. Sorry I had to pee. I am a crook. All right.
I definitely can't hang out with that thing on. I see those movies as very similar themed. I mean, these are, when I was younger, this is the stuff I would quote as being my favorite movies of all time to people, and I really don't feel that way anymore, but back in the day I'd say, well, my favorite movie ever is the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and then like Clockwork Orange, Natural Born Killers, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and I've always seen those two, especially Clockwork Orange and Fear and Loathing, as being, it's like they have the same vibe to them. It's not even that the plots or the characters are similar. I mean, but I forgot, when you said that, I remembered them saying adrenochrome, because the milk is all mixed with things. Ironically, blood and milk, right? The milk, Synthamesque, I remember that was one of the names. Maybe adrenochrome was one of the kinds of milk.
Basically the milk bar they'll serve you milk to which you can add whatever drugs you want off of the menu that they have. And several of the drugs on the menu seem to be either, direct extract or most likely, I guess, synthesized human hormones. So yeah, adrenochrome was on there. There were some others listed. I mean, I have not read the novel myself, but
show, Jim.
What?
Oh, I got to transition over here so you guys can see this. Oh,
but yeah, then when you think about that movie and the effect that this stuff had on the character in the movie, he is this sociopathic killer, and then the movie and the story is all about, I don't know. Well, you can tell me what you think it's all about, but it definitely, at the end, the point is the state is trying to cure him of his sociopathic tendencies by forcing him to observe even more violence. It's like when you are caught smoking
drugs.
Huh?
Under the influence of drugs. That's what they do. They shoot him up with their special brand of drugs and force him to redundantly observe violence and sexual content, so that the sickness that the drugs cause is correlated with the visual and audio input, and so then when he gets out later and tries to rape and murder, it makes him sick.
And it's an attempt to try to artificially create an effect of empathy, right?
Well, I mean, that's the ideal effect, but really what they end up with is it just makes him like have a really bad tummy ache.
Right. Which is, I think, probably what has actually happened to sociopaths that have been treated by every imaginable kind of attempt of psychiatry to fix them, including all the electroshock and stuff. Yeah, that's what I think. Like, at the end of the day, these people can never really change in their hearts. You know, it's just like, yeah, you can cause them to have an involuntary bad reaction to doing bad things.
A physiological reaction, but not you're not going to install empathy or compassion or trust or honesty. You know, you can't just upload these things via the matrix, but you can make them like have some kind of chemical reaction interrupt, so that they're definitely getting a message from their body or from whatever is happening that's telling them this is what's supposed to trigger me to not do something, and maybe have it be strong enough that it affects their behavior. But I mean, even in the movie, he finally goes mad enough to throw himself off the roof, doesn't die, and then the last scene is the government coming to bribe him and shake his hand, and while he's shaking the government official's hand and agreeing to the bribe, he's having a fantasy in his mind of laying in the snow with a beautiful girl having a shag while people in top hats and canes are all applauding, and that's then the credits roll, you know?
Have you seen this other Malcolm McDowell film called If?
No, I'll have to watch it.
They have it on Amazon Prime now, so I caught about half of it so far, and it's all about, they're in some kind of one of the British schools. They're calling it college, so I guess it's like high school age kids. That's what you see there too, is essentially what in America would be high school age kids, but they're off, in a boarding school. And it's okay, it was made in the 70s. Why do I bring this up? Just because it's like, it's another window into how people are made into sickos like that. Okay, so in Clockwork Orange, there's some extreme things, that the main character has gone through that made him into the sicko that he became. But in this other Malcolm McDowell movie that I'm mentioning, called If, that's just about this British school system, it's this other thing that, would also, there's ultra violence going on, it's, the kids are being beaten, and also there's just this homoerotic thing going on. I haven't seen the end of the movie, but I assume it's going there, it looks like boy rape is coming up in the movie pretty soon here. And, from what I've read and researched even recently, this is still a thing in England. Like, if you go into one of these schools that's, it doesn't even have to be a boarding school, but if it is a boarding school, then it's over. Absolutely, this is what's going to happen to you. The professors and also the older upperclassmen who are kind of in league with the professors and the people that are, or I don't even know if you call them professors, but whatever, the teachers, and the headmaster and the people that are running the schools, they all take advantage of the younger boys, even sexually, and physically just torture them, and constantly insulting them, and so they're just being bullied. But like in American public schools, you're being bullied by usually older jocks, right? In these schools, you're being bullied by the people running the school, and then they're teachers' pets that are considered the upperclassmen. Go ahead.
With the teachers' pets who gained their notoriety by being bullied most effectively prior to you. Exactly.
Well, and in this movie, it's like those upperclassmen are given actual authority in the school. Like, they tell people, when to go to bed, and they decide when someone's supposed to get their ass beat. And they have little meetings with the headmasters where they decide, what they're going to do to control the, and try to, just to keep everybody under control. And it's like, it's weird because what they're depicting is not anything that would, I would think, create a good person in society. You know, I would think that I would have thought no matter what kind of hardship you're going through in a British school, that the whole point was just to make somebody, you know, a proper citizen, right? But what I'm seeing here and what I've heard about too is the kind of stuff that would make you a serial killer.
Right. It would make you, right, exactly. It's like MK Ultra for everybody. And if we think about it, really, that's the we're still just seeing the Greco-roman model, right? You know, or all the way back to, it just made me think of your slideshow of Dear Prudence that I just watched, where Zeus, you know, with their substituting someone out as a I can't remember the word that you used, you know, but it's
cupbearer. You talking about the cupbearer?
Yeah, the cupbearer, exactly. You know, you're being substituted out as the cupbearer, but cupbearer is in quotes for boy lover, you know.
Yeah, the catamite is the
there we go.
Roman term, yeah, for the male sex slave, yes.
And I mean, I've always looked for a long time at government and university system and the banks and the churches, the big ones, all, you know, they all put these Doric and Roman columns in front of all their buildings with the huge capitals on top of them. This, you know, this huge, beautiful facade. And to me, for a long time, it's always meant like, hey, we're still trying to be these people. And you go study the history of those people, and the process of membership and initiation into that club is like, I will totally pass on having any degrees or any credentials if I have to be a catamite. No thanks. I will totally, like, no, I'll be fine to be poor or whatever, but not that.
Well, you know, you're absolutely right. Like, this was part of the whole schooling system. And I remember reading a few years ago a quote from a famous Roman philosopher, and I don't want to get the name wrong. I want to say Cicero, but you know what? Everything gets attributed to Cicero, and there's quite a few fake quotes attributed to Cicero, so that's probably wrong. But definitely some, you know, famous Roman guy said this. And if you want to check me, I know that there's a book that this same quote is in. It's called the Psychology of War or something like that. The author is named Lloyd DeMause. And so the quote is just that a boy in school would accept that as payment for good teaching, he would have to submit to having his teacher, this is the real quote part, having his teacher put his penis in between his buttocks. That's how you pay your tuition. Instead of your parents paying it or something normal.
Wow.
That's how you pay to learn how to do normal things, you know, reading and writing.
Well, I started to Google it, Tracy, but I had to stop when you got to
Yeah,
that
do.
last line. Look, my finger's like, no, let's not type that.
Okay, I remember the name of the book now. It was called The Origin of War in Child Abuse.
Okay.
So this is a great book. It's this, I think, you know, just a university professor. This is one of the subjects he writes about. He has another book that's all about...
Ooh, there's a full audio book of it on YouTube.
Oh yeah, you can totally just read it for free online. And then he has another book that's all about the ceremonies that that organized crime and cults do, and how people are injured in these ceremonies, like initiation ceremonies. And so he goes all the way back to ancient Egypt, and then into modern times with the mafia and stuff, and how they were, you know, cut off your finger or something if you told the secrets accidentally or in any way broke the rules of the cult. And it was from reading his other book that I realized that Johnny Depp, there's a story of a Johnny Depp cutting his finger off, supposedly. He did, too. He cut off the end of his finger.
Oh, yeah, you can see
This is just a few years ago.
Really? Huh.
Yeah, and then, like in the press they said that he was arguing with his wife, who he's divorced from now, and that he cut his finger really bad, and that he was writing on the mirror with the blood. But if you look at the, like, there's people that have zoomed in on his hand. Like, it's, if I remember correctly, it's his ring finger on his left hand, and it's almost all the way to the first knuckle. Like, he's still got some fingernail left, but
it's kind of like the Quentin Tarantino part of Four Rooms.
Yeah. I mean, like it's like he was not paying attention when he was using the meat slicer. Man, his finger is not. It's not like he got a deep cut with a piece of glass. It doesn't look that way to me.
Well, I don't even believe any of it. You know,
no, it's a ritual. I agree.
Yeah, I think that that he probably just said the wrong thing, said too much somewhere, and this was the punishment. So then he had to come up with some story about it. And there's several of these stories, and now that you've heard this, and now that you're thinking about it, audience, next time a famous person has a bizarre injury where they actually lose one of their limbs or their ear or something, and maybe it gets grafted on later, but think about it. Like, look at their biography and see if maybe they're involved in cults, because that's one of the things they do. It was one of the marks especially when you've done something against the rules.
Yeah, and if I'm curious now. Thank you for pointing this guy out, Lloyd the Mouse, because Mouse. Lloyd the Mouse, huh? But I've tried to look at all the different angles of the ancient history cults and stuff, and I don't necessarily believe that history is what they say it is. I think there's probably about 1,000 years missing, and all the flamenco stuff there's probably a grain of truth to that we can't unravel. But they definitely all describe, across the board, all of the ancient mystery schools describe a similar process and ritual of initiation, similar rites of passage, similar ascension of degrees, and similar threats of violence and punishment for not towing the line. And so when you start to look at it that way and bring that together with what we were talking about a minute ago, that the facades of the buildings, the architecture, the structure of the mafia, of the banks, of the government, of the church, of the academia is all so similar to those actual, I mean, they stem from it, it's the cabal for a reason. And so I think that's really good advice what Tracy just said. If it says, oh, look, the former vice president was in a horrible car accident and he lost half of his left ear, well, you might be finding out a little bit more information than you think by, or all these guys on the internet with their blacked out left eye from obviously some kind of strange ritual or something going on there. Because it's just so many people.
A Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah.
Or something.
I like Tracy's theory that has something to do with a worm being put in your eye to give you, to take control of you or give you, well, I don't want to say superpowers, but makes you a hybrid something.
No, I didn't make that up. There was some lady, I think her name's Sherry Shriner, and so she's going around claiming that this is a alien technology. She sees the space aliens and the fallen angels, the Nephilim, as being the same thing, and that they're running the show behind the scenes. They're the Illuminati, and she says that when they are threatening to injure your eye, that this is what they actually do. They put some kind of worm that crawls into your eye and starts to take over your mind. Becomes it's a parasite that kind of contains the essence of a invading spirit that's actually one of the alien species, and it takes over your body. And now I had no reason to believe this lady, necessarily, but I just started looking at the symbolism of, the one eye stuff that they all do, and record promotion material and stuff like that, and in movies.
They're always emphasizing one eye. I mean,
yeah, okay, so like for years, people were saying, oh, that's just, they're flashing their Illuminati membership, and they may be, but it's more sinister than that too, because yes, it's definitely like a penalty sign, which is in Freemasonry, you know, there's these hand signals that you learn in your initiation, and there's, you know, one for each degree, in which you're, you know, the ones that are called penalty signs are the ones where you're mimicking the punishments that you agree to endure if you break your oath.
Right.
So it's, you know, getting your throat cut or your eye gouged out or your heart torn out or something like that. You'll do a little hand sign that mimics that. And so when they're covering their one eye for you know, a photo shoot for a magazine, what they're really doing is saying, yes, I'm part of this cult that has threatened to take my eye out if I don't do what they say.
Right.
And it's yeah, I when I first started learning, realizing that that's, you know, that the people were signifying membership in some kind of cult with the hand signals they do on record covers and things like that. Yeah, I didn't realize that I thought they were bragging about it, but now I realize, like, almost all these people, especially when you look at these photos, you can tell, like, they're not happy when they're doing it. You know, they're being forced to do this.
Of joy. They're not ever smiling, and if they are, it's a maniacal, scared-looking, like trapped in a corner smile. They're never at ease. They don't look comfortable. Can you see the picture that's on the screen right now, Tracy?
I closed the picture of the live stream, so no, I haven't been looking at it.
Okay,
sorry.
So I just found a picture of, I think this is the current Pope. His left eye is blacked out. He's got a Band-Aid across his eyebrow higher up. And on his collar, he has this this huge gold or brass, looks like a nail, and it's through a red Templar cross. And I thought you might recognize or know what that symbol is. But
Black.
I think it might be red. It does
red?
look black. I think it might be red, though. And there's a cross on the other side, too, but there's no nail through that one. You know what I mean?
Okay, I'll have a look here. Okay, yeah. All right, I see his face, and I see the nail thing on his collar there, yeah.
Yeah, I just thought you might, you know, at a glance it looked like a caduceus, but then I zoomed in farther, and it's like, no, that's... And it's probably, you know, they're probably telling you, oh, obviously that's the cross, and that's one of the nails that they nailed Jesus with. It's a symbol of Christianity. And I'd say, boy, I'm a Christian. I don't remember that one.
Yeah, but okay, so this picture of him with the bruise is very similar to so many other pictures that you can find of famous and important people, where at some point in their life, in their biography, they'll just have a black eye, which...
Yeah,
I've managed to go 40 years without ever having. I don't get in a lot of bar fights, you know. I don't know how many bar fights the Pope gets in. But I mean, how, you know, yeah, if your spouse isn't beating you up and you're not getting in a bar fight, why would you have a black eye? So Hillary Clinton, for instance, she had a black eye. Remember, she said that she had fallen down. This is right when she first started supposedly having strokes and stuff, and she had one really severe stroke, and that's when she started wearing the really thick glasses. It was right before she was supposed to testify about Benghazi. So, you know, that was back before I heard any of this shit, but I just thought, wow, they beat her up. You know, I didn't think that it was a coincidence at the time. And then, subsequently, many years later, people started pointing out that this is a trend. You see so many famous people having this issue, usually with just one eye, and usually with really lame excuses for why it supposedly happened. That's all fake.
I know. I was just looking at that. This one's really funny, folks. Like, if you, I mean, that's almost already a picture show meme. It just needs a caption.
But the Sherry Shriner lady who thinks that this is really the result of an alien worm crawling through the corner of someone's eye, she says that that's what causes the bruise. You know, this parasite gets into your eye and it causes a reaction. It's temporary, but it's part of the parasite taking you over. This is when you've really sold your soul and you've really become part of their group, and you're no longer yourself anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that comic's kind of funny. You know, it says a concussion and a black eye. Dang, I was almost out the door. Benghazi underneath her eye. I want to type Benghazi Clinton black eye and see if we can find it.
Yes. So I don't know if there was really any value to what Sherry Schreiner said, but to me it inspired me. It inspired my research, and one of the things I ended up finding was, this was a few months ago, that there's this major trend on YouTube and on some other popular websites. It's all having to do with this anime that's very popular called Tokyo Ghoul.
Yeah, I remember that one. Okay.
So I've only seen a couple episodes of it, but my understanding is this guy he's part of a race of people that are part demon, I guess, and part human. I forget what they're ghoul. Well, so in the show they're calling them ghouls, and there's like people that are full ghoul and people that are half ghoul. And if you're half ghoul, then you only have one eye that's kind of like a red shiny demon eye. And so there's these, you know, the logo for the Tokyo Ghoul show shows this guy who is the main character in the show. Yep. So he's got the fucked up red eye, and then a lot of times he's also wearing this, looks to me like a bondage mask. And the bondage mask is in such a way that there's like artificial, okay, yeah, you see how it is there. Like there's a zipper going up the side of his face. Okay, well, you can't quite see there, but you see missing fingers there, don't you? Or I don't know.
Well, he's definitely flashing some kind of a. He's flashing a weird hand sign. I was trying to see if he could get a more of a side perspective here. I was just trying to follow what you were saying. I didn't see any. I remember Hillary having a black eye, but I didn't see any photography of it. But of all people to try and pull down most of the pictures of her black eye, I think she could probably pull some strings. Call John Podesta and tell him to do his thing or whatever.
All right. Well, okay. So these pictures that you're showing, I'm not seeing the thing up the side of the face as much, but you definitely see like the fake grinning teeth that are part of the mask. So this imagery is very, very popular. Oh, and okay. In several of these images that you're showing, he's doing that hand signal where there's 3 fingers up and 2 down.
Right.
Okay, that is something that they apparently use in one of the degrees of, I think, the AA, the Astrum Argentum, Aleister Crowley Occult Order.
Right. Now that's an order that he took over, right? Or is that one that he started?
I think he started that one. Yeah, okay. He took over OTO, which was a German order before him, and then he started AA. And AA is all about homosexual sex magic. And it's this, which to him was the highest thing ever. So anyway, yeah, okay. So what I've deduced, of course, I'm an outsider, but from looking at their own internal documents and then looking at the way in which they use this hand signal, sometimes you actually see the fingers that are down as fingers that have been cut off. They actually will illustrate this. So I'm thinking that this is a penalty sign about how if you do, you know, the wrong thing, then they're going to cut off a couple of your fingers. So anyway, this Tokyo Ghoul guy is like being used as a symbol by this cult now. I can tell. There's linked and very suspicious accounts on YouTube and Instagram and Twitter, all utilizing this Tokyo Ghoul imagery. Either they'll directly use the logo from the show or stills from the show, or they'll have their own version of it, you know, something inspired by it. And yeah, it seems to be, it's used as a threat in itself. This is where I first noticed it. It's like it was being used in videos that were made to threaten people into silence. And it's probably too hard for me to go over all the details of why I came to that conclusion, but it was just obvious in video after video that I saw that some of these videos had been
honestly,
put up.
I don't think we want to necessarily go back there anyway, if you know what I mean. I mean,
Right.
I get it though. Yes, I understand that. Let's just say that it potentially ties to things that are more recent. It's not necessarily ancient, you know, like. Because I remember when we very first talked. After your website was messed up and came back, I'm pretty sure we covered some of this stuff, and that rapper that got in trouble, and his girlfriend and everything. I don't remember his name now. Was it 666 Tenation or whatever? Is that the guy?
No, XXX Temptation.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's right, XXX.
Yeah, so he likes to flash a lot of stuff.
666 XXX. Which is which, right?
Well, did I mention what I think the XXX is about?
No.
On any of your shows? Okay, so this is what I think. I think that this is probably something that's been around for a long time, and maybe is the reason why pornographic films are rated XXX, or that's the way to, that's the code for them. So there's how did I get there? Well, I figured out there was a painting that someone made. I think the artist's name was Travis Scott, and then there was a guy who was a rapper, and another rapper gave this painting to that rapper as a gift, and it ended up in the news. And the painting has 3 X's on top, and then it says porn star death, and then it has some, grisly death symbols and stuff all over it. And there was no real explanation as to why this painting was given by one rapper to another. Well, if you think about what the 3 X's might mean, I've seen it shown in recent rap videos where they're depicting 3 eyes on a person's face, right? The 2 regular eyes, and then you have the 3rd eye in the middle. So, even though one, of course, does not see a eye in the middle of your forehead, the 3rd eye is typically thought to be, the chakra in between your eyes, and it's thought of as being synonymous with the pineal gland, which does have photoreceptive capabilities. And in some species, like lampreys, they can actually see with their pineal gland. It's actually like an external organ. They can see with it. So anyway, the pineal gland really is the 3rd eye, it really means something, certainly to cultists. And what I've deduced from symbolism and hints that are in rap videos and the lyrics to the music is that, if you were to get taken over, have your soul taken over, but still have your body alive, that would be symbolized by having an X over the 3rd eye, which is exactly how the Manson family, by the way,
put an X
depicted themselves. It was while he was on trial that they started doing this, but they put X's in the middle of all their foreheads and stuff.
I remember it from the Rob Zombie song because he sampled at the beginning of one of his albums.
And then sometimes they'll show in these rap videos and pictures that I've seen, they'll show one of the other eyes being X'd out, or sometimes all 3. And when all 3 eyes are X'd out, that's like when a person has actually totally been murdered. That represents someone being totally killed, body and soul. So that's what I think the 3 X's are about, even the symbolism connected to the pornographic industry, why they would call it in that painting that I just described, porn star death, is this is what, this is the ultimate threat. First, we're going to take your soul, and if you still don't do everything, then we're gonna kill your body too, and then you'll be totally dead. 3 X's over all 3 eyes. So
Right.
I think that's
that
about.
makes me think of scripture too, you know, because there's a scripture in the Bible that's you know, don't fear who can only kill your body, but fear God who can kill both your body and your, you know, can allow both your body and your soul to die, you know.
It's funny you mentioned that. Okay, so one of the hitmen that supposedly worked with Manson too and was involved with the Roy Raiden murder also told one of his accomplices at one point, shoot him twice, once to kill his body and once to kill his soul.
Interesting.
Yes.
Oh, did you see this? Did you get to see this Beatles picture? I don't know if you still have your browser open or not, but I opened this Beatles picture bigger because of
I don't see it.
The hats.
Oh, there you go. Ah, yes.
So we've got like the bull horns, what I would call like a Mercury type hat on Paul here, and then this one, I think this makes me think of Melik Taos maybe, or Quetzalcoatl.
Well, I see what you're saying there. It's almost like, okay, both Paul and John have kind of Mercury type hats. I would almost say that John's looks even more Mercury like.
Right.
And in Yellow Submarine, John is or the Sergeant Pepper version of John is wearing a Mercury hat also.
Yeah,
So
I have that one. I'm gonna bring those figurines so you can see them. They're drawn by the guy who did Spawn. What's his name? Todd McFarlane.
oh wow.
So that they were manufactured by his company, and they're really nice. You know, I had them. I probably have some still in the package, but some of them got opened, and those I had up on the shelf. I was gonna bring them for our first show when we were talking about Mickey Mouse and Yellow Submarine, and I just forgot. I've got them sitting on my desktop still, so I'll bring them just so I can hold them up and show you. But yeah,
Okay.
John definitely is wearing the Mercury hat as the Sergeant Pepper version of himself, and I would say this George Harrison hat is probably Mithras, huh? I know that the mithril cap is usually more like the Smurf hat, but I mean this represents the Taurus or the bull.
Yeah, or maybe it's like a Viking hat.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have to look at the history of that hat.
Yeah. So, yeah, go ahead.
You think we should keep trying to go on, or you want to? We've been almost probably exactly 3 hours at this point. Would be my guess. Let me look at the.
All right.
At the timer.
No, I think I've said enough for tonight.
But let's just plan to do it again next week. This is fun. I'm enjoying it. I hope. I guess let's take a quick glance at the chat just in case there's anything really prescient to this moment, and then we'll just call it a show here. Let's take a look real quick.
The chat's been pretty interesting.
Did you see anything, Jim, that's like just really sticks out?
There's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I think we're all good. I think if we try and roll through this, it's going to take too much.
Okay.
So awesome. So what we'll do is we'll just kill the feed like we did last week, and give ourselves a minute to follow up with you after, Tracy. And so I guess as is RX Only Picture Show tradition, I'm going to tell anyone that's still watching, all 25 of you, we're capping out about 3 hours as usual, folks. We say, okay, bye. And this is what you should tell.
Okay, bye.
Hang up the telephone with your friends. That's what you're supposed to say. Okay, bye. Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.